you recodified everything.
Yeah.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to City Council Conference
be on
Meeting
face, I don't know.
of Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. Two items on the agenda. Discussion of City of Norman boards, commissions, and committees.
Me.
That's you, Miss Jeannie.
Yeah, Councilmember Schuler was like, what do you mean it's just going to be a minute? We've worked on this for years. Well, you guys have. I know it's been, I think even COVID, it might have interrupted a little bit of it in the end. And then we were recodifying or doing the entire Muni Code. That took like 18 months in the middle of all of it. We kind of stopped. And then Catherine said, hey, do you want to finish this up? I'm like, sure. But so it has, I didn't bring the entire history, but there has been a number of meetings. And it took a while to kind of boil it all down. And I think I've got it there, but I do have one little part that I'm going to talk about. First, I just wanted to talk about that, cities do have, and these are citizens that serve on all these boards and committees. They're volunteers, and I always take every opportunity to tell them thank you for wanting to do this. But some are by statute and ordinance or resolution. Boards and commissions, are they the same or are they different? They're really used interchangeably. The definitions I found were, and Catherine, it's not late, she's here.
Nailed it.
A board is that they have some kind of supervisory, investigatory, advisory powers, commissions, if you're entrusted, a group of people entrusted by the government or other official bodies, which is when the mayor makes his appointments to do something. They're usually, a lot of times they'll have experts on them, professionals, or just individuals who have relevant experience and want to serve on that board or commission. A committee is somebody's, delegated to consider or take action or report on matters. So I think, you can read that up there. It's just, they're all about the same, but not really, but yes, they are. We just seem to use them interchangeably. And we have different types of boards, commissions, and committees. Recommendatory, they're not binding, they're to advise. But when you go to oversight, that's to watch over or to direct, and that's kind of, not binding, but to advise. They're advisory, having the power to make recommendations, but they don't necessarily take the actions to enforce them. And then quasi-judicials is a little bit different. They're a proceeding conducted by an administrative or executive official or organization that's similar to a court hearing, say planning commission or historic district. They do have a little more authority than our boards and commissions. But that is not to say that everybody who serves on them do not serve an important role in the city. So I think I did the last presentation in October. And from that I had boiled down, Catherine provided me with information from all the previous meetings, all the proposals everybody talked about. Did you want to leave in something, take out something? Did we want to combine some committees? So that has been talked about. I say it looks like it's not much today, but that's due to a number of meetings and lots of discussions that got us here. So the first one, and I'm going to do it real quick because Jason wanted to be first, but this one's really quick, so we'll do his second. There had been discussion about Greenbelt and planning, combining, and after what came out of those discussions was there was no consensus to do that. But what did come out of the meetings was on planning commission to make some appointments ward specific. So that will be added in section 2-301G, and that would be requiring one member from each ward and a member at large in the planning commission. The second proposal was consolidating the tree board, the bicycle advisory board, and the board of parks. After all the discussions, it came out there was no support to consolidate all three, but there was support to consolidate the tree board and the board of parks commissioners. We have a current tree board that has a lot of authority and what the tree board can do, including issuing permits. We would repeal that tree board, and then I took out and I put everything from the tree board into the park commission board. Well, since October, the last time we discussed this, there has been a lot of discussion and pretty hard work on revising or making a tree ordinance. Mm-hmm. When I talked to Ashlyn in our office who's working on that, and I was showing her what I've got here on the tree board and park, she's like, whoa, some of that's going into the tree ordinance. So my question, what I want to ask on this specific one is, do we want to go ahead and repeal the full tree board and fold it into the Parks Board? Or do you want to think if we've got this tree ordinance still being worked on, Ashlyn tells me she thinks it could be summer, July, something like that, before that is brought before. It's pretty lengthy right now, but it is taking in, like the permitting for the tree, so it has some of the, what the duties related to trees in the new pending tree ordinance. So that's, I need some direction on that.
Yes.
So it sounds, I'd like given that context, I know that they've been working on a tree ordinance and they've been working very diligently on that and something to come forward. And we've wanted to see that for a while. Is it possible that we could wait until we get that ordinance to kind of see what that is and then take the action to dissolve the tree board? Once their work is done on the tree ordinance and that all gets wrapped up, and then they get folded into parks.
If that's y'all's direction on that, I do know it's pretty lengthy, and Ashlyn is hopeful that they're getting pretty close.
Yeah, I'd like them to see them finish their work, and then that would be a natural stopping point, I think, to make this transition. Others.
Councilman.
Yeah, I want to echo that. That was exactly the question I had in mind. Sounds like there would be oversight as long as tree board is around, and then when that ordinance is adopted, then permitting, enforcement, or review will fall under Parks Board?
I believe so. I'm not sure where, is that right, Jason? They're planning on putting the tree ordinance into, it will all be folded into the Parks Board.
And there's not a whole lot of governance that the tree board currently has. That's most of that falls underneath the city manager or his designees. So we've already reviewed the current or the proposed tree ordinance with the tree board, and it just got done. I think we did it last month with the tree board, and what we didn't want to do is come to committee with the current council and then have first reading and then have to re-explain it to another council in July. We're kind of hitting that period perfect where it's going to be two councils, so we're just kind of waiting to have that whole process go through Park Board this month and then to the new council in July or August. And of course, we're going to bring it to a committee before we bring it for first reading.
And will that add another person to planning?
I don't know.
No, okay. And Don Menzies on board with this?
We talked, we haven't really consulted with the tree board about repealing the tree board. That was just mainly through you guys. But they are aware of it. We haven't got stamps or approvals. And I think the general idea was to basically fold those two boards together. We have kind of stopped taking applications for both. So we do have open positions in both the Park Commission and the tree board. So everybody that has open positions could reapply, and we could have some tree board members on the Park Commission.
Well, and that does bring me to one of the recommendations from all the meetings was if we do fold the tree board into the parks, that there fill a vacancy with somebody with an interest or expertise in urban forestry. Or we could even put in there, specify that that's somebody who needs to have that expertise to be on the Parks Board. So that did come out of the committees, that it did need to have still keep somebody who has that expertise.
So, sorry, is that a position requirement? Like how Historic District has like certain specifications?
We could make one of the say that one position had to be a urban forestry.
But not be ward specific, is that what you were asking?
No, just like a expertise requirements. Like I'm struggling for Historic District, but technical expertise for like design and all
We'll
that.
see later in the animal welfare oversight that and those committee members were asking for at least 3 have certain expertise.
Yeah, I'm supportive of that.
So I'll await word from Ashlyn, and that'll probably be taken care of her and Parks, and she'll have that presentation when she does the ordinance. Okay.
I'd probably want to see, like Don, if you wanted to be on the Parks Board, that'd be a good fit.
Tremendous asset.
Yeah, and so we don't have to have a park or a tree board in order to have our Tree City USA designation or anything.
Well, To a certain extent, but it'd be kind of like the city council oversees Northern Municipal Authority and Utilities Authority. It'd be the Board of Park Commissioners and Tree Board. It'd be all one committee or board.
The acronym for that's gonna be terrible.
Well, it'll be namely, it's just Board of Park Commissioners, hopefully.
Yeah, I think in the packet we had it as a Board of Parks Commissioners, and then it was like duties of tree board. We didn't call it the tree board, but we can come up with the correct language. Duties related to trees is how I put it in there. Maybe we can come up with something a little bit more on point. Okay, so I'm just gonna hold off on that. One of the main ones that needed to be done is codifying the Animal Welfare Oversight Committee. That was done by the committee started back in 2002-03 by a resolution, even before we built the shelter. It's when we were naming the adoption center, I think after Denise Miles. And then it never really it didn't get codified, they didn't have terms. And so we've got somebody who served like 20 years. He's awesome, but that's a long time. And so we've needed to make this change, and so we would add section 2-347 as the Animal Welfare Oversight Committee. I've got that in your packet. I've been over this, the Oversight Committee knows this is coming. Major Barber, who's the major over the animal shelter, we've talked about it with Kelly. So they know what's coming, because it is gonna have one change. But I've got the purpose there, and everybody was happy with that. And here, Councilmember Grant, we're requiring that there be we prefer, it's not required, there be a veterinarian, a local, somebody from an animal welfare organization, and at least one citizen from the rural area, at least Ward 5 in there. The term of office, we can't just like everybody who's on the board now say you're not on the board anymore, because we need to have some continuity of expertise and historical knowledge about what's been going on with that committee. So we're going to, I don't have it with me, but I've got a list of when they all came on, and I mean, some have been on 10 and 11 years, and the two of them, the longest ones, are gonna be on for a year, and then we're gonna rotate that off. We'll have to have it staggered. I am going to ask them at the next meeting, is somebody really tired and wanna go ahead and go off now? See if somebody's ready to go, and then we'll fill it as needed. But we've had vacancies on that board for a while, but we've been waiting for it to get back up to full speed. And they know it's coming. They're very dedicated, as everybody knows. I mean, to stay on that committee for as long as they have, and they're very active and very successful in their advocacy of animals in Norman. And I've seen so much change on that board from when I first started. Probably a little after this resolution, I've probably been the staff liaison for over 15 years, and we went through some kind of growing, rough, struggling pains, and now we've got that oversight committee is really good, and we've got we're really proud of how our shelter operates now. But that's what that's for. That's one of the biggest ones, and it's been needed, and they're looking forward to it. So I'm confident that it'll work out. There might be you never know how to replace them, but
Yes, sir.
Is this to imply there's going to be term limits on?
yes. The term limits on the animal welfare oversight, just like the other boards and commissions, 3 years. And then they can rotate off. I think some of them just felt like, there was never even an opportunity to rotate off, and they enjoy it, but we need to be able to have different members and give them an opportunity to be off. Mark Howery, I believe, has been there for almost 20 years. Mm-hmm. He rarely misses a meeting. He's awesome. He's with the wildlife department, so there's a lot of expertise, and so we didn't want to just get rid of everybody at one time, because there's a lot of historical knowledge too, but it needs to be codified like other committees.
Councilmember Nash, were you asking if were you saying term limits for how many years they could serve? Is that your question?
Right.
The terms would be 3-year terms.
Just like,
But it
But
doesn't
not
mean that
limited to 3 years.
no, they can be, I think they can get back on if they want to be on.
Okay, that's really,
That's
Because it takes 3 years to figure out what's going on over there sometimes.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is just kind of like giving them the opportunity to decide like what the parameters are of that volunteering time, like after 3 years. maybe they don't want to get back on and open it up, or maybe they decide 6?
I believe they could, if they were to be reappointed.
Okay.
Most of the committee members on the board already do other volunteer activities at the shelter. They're everybody knows they're a very active and committed board. But they understand that it's other people and there's other people besides them, and they don't, from what I've understood, they don't have any problem with letting other people have an opportunity because they're going to remain active no matter what.
Well, and that's, I think, a thing that I understand, and if I had to puzzle out on some of the appointments, people that have been there 20 years or whatever, let somebody else have a chance at being able to serve and influence and do that. Not that the service has been bad.
No.
It's just giving somebody else, sometimes it's put a fresh ice cube in the drink. That's all there is to it.
And the other changes that we're bringing forward is moving the members from 5 to 7 members with 3-year terms on the Board of Adjustments. That'll also be changed in section 10-301. That's under definitions for, that was the election board. That is not the Board of Adjustment. For the Board of Adjustment, we'll change it in 2-301. And also on the Board of Adjustment, they're in a zoning ordinance under 36-570 about decisions of the Board of Adjustment, and part 2 of that will be changed from a concurring vote from 3 to 4 members of the board necessary to reverse any order requirement decision to decide in favor, and so that was increased by 1 member. The Norman election, for some reason, that committee was not listed on the appointed boards and commissions in 2-301, so I've added that to, and it's part M. And then also under definitions in in chapter 10, which is about elections, that needed to be changed from 5 to 7 members there also. So in the end, it doesn't sound like there was tons of changes, but there was a lot of discussion to get there. And I wasn't participating in the beginning of it, but I know there was discussion about all the boards and commissions, and that took a lot of time and thought. There was a little bit of other discussion about did we need committees for senior issues or transportations or budgets, and it was decided that no, that was already covered in other boards and commissions and committees. One was, and I'm excited to say about this because I have some information, about refining or renaming the Norman Youth Council. At this time, we're not renaming it, but you will hear tonight when this last group gets does their little presentation and gets their certificates. Ashlyn Wilkerson, new attorney with lots of energy and a lot of great ideas. She started going to youth council meetings just to kind of get to go to the other departments since she was new. And she came up with a new plan for the youth council. The first part of the year in the fall, we'll still go to different departments. We're going to have to not go as many. But then she's going to have an advocacy project that they will select, and she'll work on them with them for 2 months, and then they'll present that at the last city council meeting like it would be tonight. The students will come up with their own ideas, and she'll work with them. She thought that sounded really easy. I'm like, good, I'll be your helper. She also changed when we advertised, and that's been really good because we've already got it's closed, but we're going to kind of reopen it again to get it up. We got some good interest already, and so she's gotten some applications. She spent time with about 3 of the students that she reached out to, and she met with them. They thought it was a great idea. They want to do the extra work. I mean, these students are the ones that are, they're great students. They are looking for something to put on their resume, I will say that, but they really are interested in doing a project that would affect students. I'm looking forward to what they come up with, and I'm just going to sit back and let the youth handle the youth. It's not me right now. I think I've done it for about 13 or 14 years, so it was time for a little bit of a tweak and change, and I think Ashlyn's going to do a great job on that. And I'm always been so impressed with the kids, and you'll see a few of them tonight. So the summary, we've already said they've been discussed a lot. I've put the ordinances in there, and I'll get them in final review for your packets for the first reading. We talked about the animal welfare. We've already talked about how the tree board will be doing, and I've given you the youth council update. So I hope to talk to Brenda. I'll get this together, and we'll get it on the next, maybe not the first one in June, but maybe the second one we were thinking. And we'll have this one done. It's taken a while, but I think it had a lot of good discussion about it. Does anybody have any questions?
How many committees are we up to now?
38?
36, I think, is what we had.
It's holding.
And I think, yeah, it's holding, because we aren't doing anything with the tree board yet. I think that was the only one where there was a change, or that would lead to a reduction in number.
It's not only the reduction in number, it's also finding good volunteers. If we're talking about knowledge, skills, and abilities for most of these things, we want competent people doing competent advisory work to us. And it's finding those volunteers that gets extremely hard. And some are limited, like veterinarian kinds of things. Obviously, there's going to be a certain kind of person, but for the other ones, it gets hard at times to be able to find decent folk who will just do that kind of job. Yeah.
I was just curious a little bit about that core Norman development group that was suggested committee.
I don't remember exactly what that was, Councilmember. I'll go back and look at my prior notes, but it was in the notes that had been discussed, that there'd be some kind of core Norman committee, I think. And then it was like we already have things that cover that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like the senior issues or the transportation. We already have committees that, would overlap with those topics. But I can look back in my notes and see.
I was going to say,
Because you're core Norman, so I'll look back and see if there's any specific discussion that you may want to look at again.
yeah, I was going to say, there is a community group, mostly developers, some electeds, and people who work in retail that are informally meeting to talk about redevelopment in the core. So I was just wondering what the benefits, obviously if it was a committee or a board, it'd have a staff advisor, but
I'll look back and see what some of the prior minutes of those meetings said about that.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Jeannie? Thank you, ma'am.
I don't know if there's any, who's next, but it got dark when that went off. so.
Went dark. This is a discussion that Shakira will do when you've got time. Discussion regarding establishing an internal audit charter and policies.
Hello, City Council. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Okay. I'm just gonna disconnect for a bit on this one. Let's make this easy. Okay. So I just wanted to start with a brief presentation on the value of internal audit, which is enhancing accountability and transparency, and the importance of internal audit in municipal governance. Short 12 slides. So what is internal audit? Internal auditing is an independent, objective assurance and consulting activity designed to add value and improve an organization's operations. That organization would be the City of Norman. It helps an organization accomplish its objectives by bringing a systematic, disciplined approach to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of risk management, control, and governance processes. The objectives of internal audit include ensuring compliance, mitigating risks, improving operations, and enhancing accountability. So the key functions of internal audit, conducting risk assessments, as we are doing at this present moment, of all 13 city departments, developing audit plans, which we will have a risk-based triennial audit plan, which comes from the risk assessment, and then performing audits and reviews that result in being the highest risk to the city objectives, and then reporting those findings and recommendations. Recommendations are just that, they are not directives. You can agree, disagree, or modify but agree with modification. And And then we monitor the implementation of those corrective actions. Those corrective actions will come from management of those departments. They don't come from internal audit. The benefits of internal audit, we enhance accountability by ensuring compliance with laws, regulations, and policies of the city, of the state, and possibly of federal laws. And we improve financial management by identifying inefficiencies, reducing waste, and enhancing fiscal responsibility. We have, provide effective risk management by identifying and mitigating risks to protect municipal assets and our reputation. And then transparency and trust, we provide assurance to stakeholders, which is city council, managers, the public, of course, and the public, that municipal operations are conducted with integrity and efficiency. So the internal audit process, this is more of an overview. We identify audit objectives, scope of the audit, and the resources that will be applied in such audits. Field work, which is gathering evidence, testing controls, and assessing the risks. Reporting, so documenting findings with reports, conclusions, and those recommendations that follow. And then follow-up, which is monitoring the implementation of corrective actions, again, which are designed and implemented by management of such departments, processes, or functions. So establishing governance for internal audit, the importance of governance in ensuring the effectiveness and independence of internal audit includes governance provides the necessary structure, policy, and procedures to ensure the effectiveness, independence, and reliability of the city's internal audit function. Establishing robust governance systems is essential for establishing and maintaining the integrity and trustworthiness of the internal audit function within the city. And then the lack of governance diminishes the credibility and value of internal audit and its auditing reports. Components of governance, two of what we will talk about today is the internal audit charter, I believe, right? And then which defines the purpose, authority, and responsibilities of internal audit. The audit committee, which we have the finance committee acting as the audit committee at this present time. They provide oversight and guidance to the internal audit function. Policies and procedures, something else we will discuss today, and that establishes the standards for audit activities is broad. The internal policy and procedures will be much more detailed, but there's no, that's established by me, and it's more directive to the internal audit department or Office of Internal Audit. And then the code of ethics, which we act upon or act under, is we ensure integrity, objectivity, and professionalism. Why governance matters: it ensures independence by preventing undue influence and bias in audit activities. It must be ethical. It enhances credibility, which demonstrates commitment to transparency and accountability to the public, of course. It improves effectiveness, provides clear roles, responsibilities, and processes for internal audit, aligns with best practices. Those best practices are the Institute of Internal Auditor Standards, the Generally Accepted Government Auditing Standards, and COSO Framework on Internal Control. Some case studies that I found that is very relevant to us within Oklahoma. So Oklahoma State Auditor, Oklahoma 1907. Didn't happen in 1907, but Oklahoma, the internal audit for the state was established in 1907. So the audit shows, this is all news headlines, audit shows Oklahoma likely misspent millions in federal relief funds. Improper oversight by state officials led to more than $29 million in federal funds being misspent that may have to be repaid to the federal government. Oklahoma Auditor and Inspector Cindy Bird said Tuesday. I believe that was about 2 weeks ago, Tuesday. City of Tulsa, Office of the City Auditor, which was created in 1909. They implemented Third Line, which is a software that detects fraud, waste, and abuse before it leaves the city's door. And it integrates with Tyler Munis Enterprise Resource Planning System, which is something that we use within the city of Norman. In those significant findings, the city auditor points to gaps in Tulsa's $87.8 million COVID relief fund accountability. In a report released by Tulsa City Auditor Kathy Criswell, if I'm saying that correctly, states the sheriff's office is overcharging the city of Tulsa for inmate housing, and a private company should take over the operations of county jail. And they said the report stated that $7.6 million are unaccounted for. The Oklahoma City Office of the City Auditor, which was created in 1975, OCPD employees discover discovery of the missing property rooms funds lead to a city audit in which the department's former chief requested the audit after an employee discovered the property room was missing $26,000. So just some recent case studies within the state of Oklahoma. And then the challenges that we may face as an Office of Internal Audit is common challenges is a resistance to change, resource constraints, and lack of awareness or understanding. Those things can be combated by education and awareness, awareness building, collaboration and stakeholder engagement, and prioritization of resources and support from leadership. In conclusion, wait, I missed a slide, sorry. In conclusion, the summary of the key points. Internal audit enhances accountability, transparency, and effectiveness in municipal governance. It establishes governance establishing governance is essential for ensuring the independence and credibility of internal audit. And then the call to action, I'd like to encourage City Council to support the establishment of governance for internal audit to promote good governance and serve the best interests of constituents. Any questions for that? No, okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Councilmember Ball.
If we can go back to the recommendations, you said that internal management is the ones that make the recommendations.
Well, no, I would make the recommendations, and internal management would have the authority to either agree, disagree, or agree with modification. So,
Using the shelter contract as an example.
yes,
So the 19 findings there, where did those recommendations come from?
they came from internal audit.
So what did you base those on? I mean, is it just your opinion? Or-
No, that came from facts and analysis and field visits.
But you're not a social worker, correct?
No, I'm an auditor.
And so who did you specifically ask to make those recommendations? Or what guidebooks did you look in, which national?
Best practices.
There's a best. Okay.
I think the recommendations were varied across various fields, and you'd have to be more specific on which.
So I just want to know where the best practice, I mean, is there a handbook that says the best practice if
For
a
how
shelter
to-
security guard isn't doing his job is to do this?
Yes, you would consult other shelters or research those shelters. You could ask people who work in shelters. I've done that.
Okay. So when the actual audit is made public, everybody will be able to see exactly where those recommendations came from?
Yes,
Perfect.
the recommendations came from internal audit based on the research and analysis performed by internal audit.
So, perfect.
So generally, so whenever she does an audit.
Oh, I understand
so-
how audits work.
Well, so there's different audit procedures, and audit procedures are designed based upon like what the department or what the auditee is going to be doing. And then, so as an example with her recommendation, so Food and Shelter was depositing the city funds. So the recommendation, because they were depositing all the city funds within their operating account, the recommendation was establish a separate bank account. That way they can segregate and keep separate, their operating funds as Food and Shelter versus the funds they receive from the city. And that will help that should assist them to be able to report activities related specific to the shelter when it relates to city funds. Does that make sense?
It makes 100% sense. So I just want to make sure that when this comes on an agenda and we are going to be voting on whatever we vote for on this contract, that we can look at the recommendation and be like, well, according to Oklahoma City shelters, these authorities, and these authorities, this is the recommendation I made. I just want to make sure it's not
No,
a,
but what we're doing is we're getting off the agenda. We're talking about one topic, and the topic is the
well, the recommendations were on there. That's why I just want to make sure we all were fully aware of where the recommendations came from and
Okay,
before we got, codified.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I forget which one came up first.
Well, mine was gonna be that we're not talking about the specific
agenda.
thing, but, I think in terms of like recommendations, you get to see too once the audit is, public and all of that, like, there's a recommendation made by internal audit, but then there were also recommendations from the city attorney's office and from the city manager's office to agree or disagree with those recommendations, and so we can see that in its entirety when we're making decisions about anything. And then ultimately, I think what Shakira is saying too is that it's presented to us as the legislative body as council, and then we can agree or disagree with said recommendations based on, you know, facts and information that we also understand to provide. So it doesn't end with internal audit.
Right.
It's more of, and then also like we make recommendations, but then depending on the department that is being audited or regulated, or making recommendations about, then their leadership will also get to make recommendations based on like approval or disapproval, or recommend with approve with modification
Yes.
or whatever. So I think it's like a multi-tiered process.
Yes, very much so.
It won't just be like internal audit, I command thee to do
Yeah,
this
so
thing.
that's what I also like to
Yeah.
emphasize very much, is these are just simply recommendations. You can completely, or management can completely disagree with them and go and make a different decision, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
they don't have to follow
The
my, their-
recommendations made from statistics and analysis.
Yes.
That will help me 10 times more than the recommendations made by the people we were auditing, or, you know, the management of the companies we was auditing, or a personal opinion. So
right,
I'm-
yes, so analysis was completed, procedures were completed, field visits, research, all of the steps that one should take when auditing a operations, compliance, or financial, right? So in all of those areas, there were recommendations.
And the sources.
That related to this contract.
Like I said, as long as there are sources for the recommendations, that's
Yep, there are.
my biggest thing. I'm all
No problem.
numbers and statistics. So.
Yep, excellent, thank you. Okay, so go ahead, I'm sorry,
I was
Councilmember
gonna
Grant.
say, so, basically, everything you presented, you don't need direction or anything on, and, basically, we'll move into getting a report in June, or we
Yes.
could
Well,
establish a committee?
so the report should be, it's, waiting for Catherine and the city manager to make their final decisions upon your feedback as city council. And once that contract is, complete or as in a draft form, then I can go ahead and finalize the report to be.
Actually, I
report-
wasn't talking about that, I know.
Okay,
that
I'm sorry.
He was veering into that direction, because he didn't show up to that meeting, thus did not have the full presentation. I was talking about, the internal audit, like coming forward with the risk assessments that you've been doing.
Yes,
I'm curious when that will come forward.
so I'm hoping to present that at the end of June. And to be, I know that July is a new council, possibly that I would have to re-present it to them, but I'm hoping to have the audit plan by the end of June. We're in the middle of the risk assessment right now.
So July-ish?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
But the establishment of the audit charter and policies, will that also come in July alongside
It's your decision.
that, or are we ready to codify? I guess that's the
See, that's,
question. That's what I thought we were talking about, to like,
Yes, so
because
the-
we have drafts of kind of the charter and some things, so like, do we need to chat about or discuss, I guess,
it was-
what is in there, and
So
then
the-
kind of moving that forward?
So the mayor gave me edits to the internal charter. It's not, I don't believe codification is needed for that, because it's just an internal charter for internal operations of the city. What may need codification is the resolution creating policies and procedures, which is really broad.
Okay.
On how the internal audit, activity would operate within the city of Norman.
And part of that in that discussion was the difference between the way that New York does it and the way that Norman does it. Different styles of governance.
Yes.
They're a strong mayor. I'm not. It just, we have council here. And so there are other things that we discussed that reflect on that. How do we work this problem? And how do we make it work with as least amount of turbulence as possible? And so, and it wasn't a problem. Just a discussion and a lot of times words, because some words in this were boilerplate-like words.
Okay, so are we gonna get to see the changes since council as a whole hires the internal auditor and oversees? So we need to have more,
Yeah.
we need to look at that, and then as a body, so more things forthcoming. I was just trying to understand where we were in the process to like help you move things along, and I guess what our timeline was in terms of getting these things established. But so the policies and procedures, that's the piece that you were talking about that would kind of conduct the office?
Yes.
And how the staffing, like, I mean, you're a staff of one right now, but hopefully there will
there's
be some some other people that come on to help you with because the city this large kind of
Right, it's
would
only
need more.
11 points for the
Yeah.
policies. It's pretty broad. The internal policy and procedure for internal audit will be, 60 pages. And it's being developed right now.
Okay.
But that is how my staff, if we get along that far, that's the manual that they will follow on how to conduct audits within the internal audit, within the city of Norman.
That makes sense.
To your question, though, I believe if you have input on what was presented
Yes.
tonight, yes, she most certainly wants that.
Sure.
I think the mayor just met with her up for the meeting and gave her his.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Okay.
Yes, absolutely, that's what she needs.
Perfect.
Just last slide, so, contact information, Shakira Kalnick, that shouldn't say Gmail, that should say at normanok.com. So my apologies there. My office number is 405-833-5393, or which, is something very pertinent, 42% of fraud cases are alerted by tip. That can be anonymous or not if you decide so, but employees of Ann Norman citizens are encouraged to call E. Bailey, a regional certified public accounting firm, at 866-912-5378, or email at www.ebailey.com/hotline to report improper activities. You report tips, and you can remain anonymous.
Why did you choose Bailey?
It's in the personnel manual for City of Norman.
Got it, thank you.
And, or you may still report them to your supervisor, and they will follow the appropriate chain of command in that situation. Okay. So next we will have the internal audit, internal charter. If you want to go through it, where we at? Sorry.
We've got about 30 minutes.
Okay. So if there's any part that any council member wants to edit or have modifications to, taking a roundabout way here, excuse me. Just gonna go to the public. Just today. Scroll up.
She's blowing my mind with the speed at which she manipulates that website. I am so impressed.
Okay, so you just want to lightly, I think there's some points in here that were raised by Catherine, our city attorney. Of course, the city mayor gave his edits to me earlier. If there's anything in there that you would disagree with, agree with, or like to modify, please let me know. I understand that these things are modified based on, of course, culture and the governance that currently operates within the city of Norman. It's pretty boilerplate, comes from the Institute of Internal Auditors, and it's not concrete. It has to fit what happens in the city of Norman.
A lot of my discussion, Shakira and my discussion, was that boilerplate didn't fit our organizational plan. Not plan, but methodologies. One of the things that we're odd with, or not necessarily odd, but at difference with this, is that here, everything for staff goes through the manager and then out. And we don't have any voice with staff. We can ask him all we want. And he's allowed the 3 votes that everybody else gets in doing stuff. And that didn't reflect that. The other part that I had in there is there are a lot of plurals when it talked to the audit department. As yet, I mean, we were told by the citizens that there would be one person. I think we could hire another person, but I'm not sure. I think it'd be easier to modify afterwards. There are 500. How many did you get requests for?
107 off the top of my head.
Yeah, it just, so that's got to come into that competition, and would that person come under the manager, or would that person come under Shakira? And how do we do that? Because we've got an odd case with you, you've got a pile of people over there.
Yeah.
And there's a model, we just have to work out those words. So those are my things with Shakira in there. And some of it was verbiage. Under authority, it says approve. And I think we need another word than approve, because that makes us approve whatever she does, in my mind. And I don't know that we want to do that. It'd probably work out, but that just doesn't seem right. So it's just, those are the kinds of things that I was going to her. Councilmember?
Yeah, that makes sense. I was gonna ask, is there, how much of this also reflects kind of what Oklahoma City's internal auditor charter, since they've, adopted theirs in 1975, they created their department. They are also a similar structure of council and things like, I think maybe seeing how they're doing it, how that lines up. I'm assuming that you consulted their
Yes. So
charter.
the charter compared to our charter, which is codified in the Media Code, OKC's charter is a little more detailed and laid out, where we have maybe 3 points. They have 7 to 10, I believe, that covers various grounds of the functions and responsibility and authority of internal audit. But the resolution for policy and procedure it comes from what theirs look like as well. So I definitely wanted to model it after a functioning internal audit office within the within the state of Oklahoma. And I thought, and Darryl also thought that Oklahoma City was the best option to go to.
It's nice to go second. Sometimes it's a lot more work to go first.
Yeah, no, and I agree, like, it has to fit, I agree with the mayor that it has to fit with how our functionality is here, and obviously we have a special case now that we have, our city attorney with a whole department of people, and so using some of the language around like how they're working out that structure, and like I said, I know you're only a department of one right now, but the way that I see it, the citizens voted to create this role, but I don't necessarily think that it limits us to only having one person, that we can build out. Same with the city attorney, like they are an employee of council, but there's a whole department and people to be able to function for a city this size, and so in my mind, those employees would, if we're hiring someone for internal audit, that would report to you, but also there's some kind of mechanism for oversight with the city manager as well. So like kind of working in tandem.
Yes.
Because you also need kind of, like you laid out in the presentation, kind of authority and autonomy to conduct your investigations and things as needed. And so it would make sense to me that you would direct the department and the staff members underneath that. But in time.
Yes,
I guess.
in time, definitely
Yeah.
in time and
Just
within
gotta get all
budget.
those passed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a deadline for when you want info or feedback on the draft? By the end of this week?
The middle of June, just before the last meeting, I would say, just so that city council can have a opportunity to voice their feedback.
And then on approved language, so is it just like, is it blanket statement? That's kind of.
The word itself, approve, it seemed to, as in the writing, as I was reading it, seemed to say, to give tacit approval that we had to approve the charter and stuff.
Receive
We
and
do.
accept?
Receive and accept, that'd work.
Well, I mean, some of those you would actually have to make the decision.
Okay,
So
yeah,
maybe
Receive
it's
and
consider
approve.
approval of.
yeah.
Yeah. So that means that will come to council and then you guys will determine.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, it's not a bad thing, it's just for those of us that are stuck on whatever those words are, let's get, so that we just don't get stuck.
Yep.
And, because it works out. The whole idea could be very much like Oklahoma
Are
City's.
you saying that it kind of reads as we shall
Yes,
approve,
Okay.
Yeah.
as opposed to saying we have the authority to to approve.
Right.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And
Because
that's-
as reading it here, I'm like, okay, I see what you're saying. Like, it makes it seem like we have to approve, but I think maybe Catherine's recommendation on consider it for approval.
And just so that we don't get stuck there, say we're 3 Shakiras down the road and 20 mayors, type of a thing, and they're going,
Yeah.
you will have to do this.
Yeah. I
Yes.
understand that.
Wording is very important. And just to, I guess, go back to the point of developing an internal audit department, I have not made a request for an assistant, an admin, within the budget. I was hoping to just have this established before bringing someone in, and throwing them into the fire. Just, just so we can have a plan that they would follow, and I could actually have something to direct them on, or assign them an audit, or assign them an engagement, or investigation, if that were to arise.
And that's what we want to mature here
Yes.
in that. We read the mandate differently, but that's all right. There's something in there. I think you can read it either way. It's just, how do we do that and where do we place them is a longer discussion than a group of papers.
Yep.
And so, a lot of it depends on what you see as the organization, where's priority gonna be and how much. I know you take a lot of time, and I know you're very precise in the things that you do, and that's very much appreciated, but the whole gear.
Yep.
Well, and I'm glad we're going through these conversations because initially, when the voters approved the position, staff was thinking, well, what will this position need? And we're coming up with all kinds of ideas without having any real clue as to what it entails. This was long before we went up and met with Shakira's counterparts in Oklahoma City and began to get more of an idea about how this function's going to operate. And where we were thinking clerical support, and Shakira, demonstrates her ability to plow through, tasks. She may not need that much administrative, clerical to help. That may not be what she's looking for. So glad we didn't run out and try to hire somebody to help Shakira, and might not have been any help to her at all. We're going to wind up in the right spot, the right job description for the person she'll be looking for, and it'll be a lot more competitive and compelling when it comes to adding that next position to the city of Norman.
We call that more gooder.
Yes, we are on that path.
All right. Anything else from council? We have about 20 minutes until, oh, no, we don't, 35 minutes until we're back at work.
Do we go? Oh, that's not tonight.
No.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
as of now, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
We are adjourned. Good evening. Welcome to the City Council, Norman Utilities Authority, Norman Municipal Authority, and Norman Tax Increment Finance Authority meeting of May 28th, 2024. Madam Clerk, will you please call a roll?
Councilmember Ball?
Present.
Councilmember Schuler?
Here.
Councilmember Montoya?
Here.
Councilmember Grant?
Here.
Councilmember Nash?
Here.
Councilmember Foreman? Here. Councilmember Holman?
Here.
Councilmember Peacock? Is absent this evening, Mayor Hykela.
I am here. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item is the recognition of the 2023-24 Norman Youth Council. Ms. Snyder, would you please lead that?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I always say every year, this is one of my most favorite times to do is introduce the Norman Youth Council that we've had for this year. Just to give you an overview of what we do have sophomores, juniors, and seniors from our local high schools, homeschool, or private schools can apply. They get considered and approved by city council, as you all did earlier in the year. They serve from September through May. And what they've been doing recently in the last number of years is they go to different departments and see what's going on in city government. We have 13 students this year, 5 sophomores, 5 juniors, and 3 seniors. We've got 6 for Norman High, 6 from Norman North, and 1 homeschool student. I'm excited to say, I mentioned it earlier in the previous meeting, that Ashlyn Wilkerson in our office has started going to the meetings with me just because she was new and to get to know about other departments in the city. And she's going to take over youth council. I said I'd be her helper. But she's going to, in addition to touring the facilities next year, they will have an advocacy project that she's going to work with the students, and they will present that project at their May meeting next year. So I think really looking forward to that. But for this year, we've asked a few of the students to make some presentations. I'll just do a quick overview. There's all their names. In September, the mayor came and we got acquainted and kind of talked about what we were going to do. In October, we went to the water treatment plant. They always loved that. I was always amazed until I started going, but I wasn't great in chemistry and all that type in science, and the kids really do appreciate that. Fire Station 9 loved doing that. They brought out one of the big ladder track. It was not the ladder one. It has another name, but they were able to see that. Always loved going to the Animal Welfare Center, the police department, and then we got to add the Young Family Athletic Center this year. They got to see it just a week or so before it opened and do a tour. And then in April, we got to tour our new municipal court. So we had a lot of good touring going on. A few students are going to come up and just give a quick presentation. Langley Davis, she's going to talk a little bit about what happened at the orientation.
Hello.
I'll just kind of scroll through these.
Okay. As she mentioned earlier, I'm Langley Davis. I'm a recently graduated senior from Norman North High School, and I plan to attend OU and study microbiology. So I'm going to be talking about our first meeting, which was our orientation. That's where we got to meet our Mayor Larry Hykela and our Assistant City Attorney Jeannie Snyder. And that's how we learned all the details of the council, such as how the council passes laws, adopts the budget, and sets policies, as well as other details like how the city consists of 9 members, a mayor, and then 8 councilors. But most importantly, we were able to ask some questions to our mayor, and that's how we were able to see the passions behind each of our leaders in Norman.
Thank you. Okay, next we had a set of twins, and I know they get tired of twinning, but I'm going to have them come up together anyway. It's Ryan and Zachary Zimmerer, and they're going to talk about the water treatment plant. They both told me that they are headed to Spain for part of the summer with a teacher.
Yep.
They're not really exactly sure what they're going to do in Spain. They do need to learn Spanish, they think.
Nah,
But-
we've done it.
You've already learned
We've taken
Spanish?
Spanish for 5 years.
Oh.
We're fine with that.
And I would not doubt this about these two young men. They've been a pleasure to have in our group.
Okay, so our topic is the water treatment facility tour in October, and we did that with Andrew Brule, I think I'm saying that right. And it was really interesting seeing the plant and a lot of the, intricate processes that go on with making sure that the city has safe water. And especially something that I thought was pretty cool was like all the chemicals and different things that themselves you'd think, well, what could this possibly have to do with making water safe? But it all works together. And I thought the clarifier was really neat just to see the spinning mechanics of it. And I think that was definitely a crowd favorite.
And something that I thought was interesting about the water treatment plant was especially all of the chemical processes that go for making the water from like Lake Thunderbird and the other water sources in Norman like safe to drink, and how everything has to be monitored at all times. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Okay, next is Rafael Gomez, and he's going to talk about Fire Station number 9. It's always a hit.
So my name is Rafael Gomez. I was a junior this past school year, and I'm not sure quite what I want to study in university. So in November, we went to Fire Station number 9, and we received a tour from Assistant Chief Skelly. And so it was really interesting to see the new facilities of the fire station and to learn about how they were energy efficient, so that's saving the city money. In addition, it was really interesting and novel to learn about the long hours that the firefighters serve and how these dedicated public servants spend their days keeping the city safe. In addition, we learned more about the specific duties that they have, not only responding to fire-related calls, but to just general issues within the city. And so to get a better sense of their duties and the long hours they put in, it was really an honor.
Mary Freebrick. I told her I'd get that wrong. Another, crowd favorite is always the Animal Welfare Center.
I'm Macy Feebrick, and I finished up my sophomore year at Norman High School. After graduation, I want to go to OU. And in December, shelter manager Kelly Robertson gave us a tour of Norman's Animal Wellness Center, which was built in 2016. And we got to see all the different animals that were there, like the cats and the dogs. And the shelter holds about 92 dogs and 68 cats. And we got to see their clinic and stuff, and they care for a lot of animals there, about like 2,000. And then we got to see this cart that they take to all the events to try to get people to come to them to adopt animals. Like they'll show up at events and then people can adopt them there. And we met Paisley, which was the puppy being fostered by Officer Robertson, and that was probably my favorite part. It was so cute. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you don't know, the adoption trailer was purchased a few years ago, but it was, we received the funds from an estate that we were surprised about, and that's how we purchased that trailer a number of years ago. Okay, the next is Peyton Barber. I will say has to talk about the police department because he is Major Barber's son, and Major Barber's here. But so I told Peyton, I go, you got to talk about the police department. So he's been a pleasure to have.
Hello, my name is Peyton Barber. I'm a recently graduated sophomore and actively homeschool. In January, we were able to tour the police department with Major Brent Barber. We discussed many of the roles that the Norman Police Department covers and some of the special teams they have. We also learned that the police department building used to also house the city's municipal court, which recently moved to their new building. This has given the police department more room. One of the areas we toured was dispatch that receives the 911 calls for Norman. We also learned that the police department responds to about 70,000 calls for service a year for a population of 128,000. The police department provided the demonstration with a robot they use for responding to bomb threats. We also got the opportunity to try on one of their bomb suits. We also met Vader, one of their police canines.
Thank you, Peyton. That was the first time we got to have the bomb demonstration. I guess Brent helped us with that. Yeah, it's good to have a dad on the team. So, Selah Kennedy. Did I say that right, Selah? I got it. It took me about 3 times. She's going to talk about the YVAC, the Young Family Center, Athletic Center.
Hi everyone, my name is Selah Kennedy, and I was just previously a sophomore at Norman High School, and I plan to be a journalist or investigative journalist in the future. In February, we got to tour the Trey Young Center, or also known as the YFAC, and we got to be toured around by the program athletics coordinator, Evan Alexander. We learned that the art at the front of the area, we got to find out that it was a mixture of a swimmer, volleyball player, and basketball player. We also found out that there was various types of sports offered at this center, from basketball to volleyball, pickleball courts, and 2 Olympic-sized pools, and that there are sports medicine, concessions, and an Adidas store inside of this new center. We got to see a brief demonstration on how to work the scoreboards for the basketball and volleyball scores, and that there will be new job opportunities for high schoolers like us to work there over the summer. We also learned that the center was about $22.5 million in construction, and that the center was a collaborative project, not just the Trey Young family. It was a collaborative project between the city, Norman Forward, and Norman Health Regional Center.
Okay, I moved my note. Who's doing municipal court? Jesse. That's right. I don't know where I put it, Jesse. I looked back there. It's on the front page. That's where it is.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessie Wong. I'm going to be a senior at Norman High School, and I get to talk about the municipal court. So this was a $3.7 million project that we got to visit. It's new, which I will say is much better than the last one I visited last year, the older one. Good job, guys. So we basically learned more about the city's municipal court processes, and also got to see Drew Nichols, who's the judge, get to do his video arraignments. And I feel like the most notable part of this experience for me was just I got to ask him some questions about his own profession as a lawyer, which is something that I'm interested in looking into. And it was nice to get to hear from someone who has the experience and kind of hear about how his kind of path was like. So, thank you.
All right, Mayor, we're going to hand out some certificates. And if that doesn't give you hope for the future, people, it does me. These kids are outstanding. Langley Davis. Macy Freebrick. Macy Freebrick. Rafael Gomez. Selah Kennedy. Jessie Wong. Ryan Zimmerer. And Zachary Zimmerer. Thank you.
All right. We'll move to council announcements and start with Ward 1.
I'll keep it very short today. First, to our youth council and all the other youth in Norman, happy summer vacation. For all of our parents, it's only 3 months long. So we have an amazing pool, an amazing Wi-Fi, and one of the best parks and recs departments in the state. So we're here to help you through it. So just stand by. In regards to the youth council, applications were due for next year's by the 24th. But I guess there's still a spot or two to fill, so they will still be accepting applications and looking to fill a few more seats. So if you're interested and want to be like these young men and gentlemen up here, get your application in and come on down. And the last thing, I will be doing kind of like a youth council prep program this summer. So if you're in grade school or middle school, I've already talked to Chief King, I've talked to Michelle Loudenback, I've talked to a few of our department heads. And so if you're interested, I'll be doing a few small tours, so if you're interested, let me know. I'm getting the dates scheduled for that. I'm going to try to do one probably every 2 to 3 weeks. So tour the police department, pretty much what the youth council did, just on a smaller scale, and try to keep it fun and keep the learning going all summer long. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember?
No announcements for Ward 2.
Councilmember?
Good evening, Ward 3 in Norman, Oklahoma. I have no announcements, but thank you all for being here.
Councilmember?
Good evening, Ward 4 in City of Norman. Between graduations and holidays, I just want to remind everyone as we close out the month of May that it is also Mental Health Awareness Month, which is meant to destigmatize mental health conditions and encourage holistic treatment of families and individuals. Last Thursday, I was invited to speak at the Behavioral Health Center at Porter Village, located at 506 Wellness Way, and it is in Ward 4. The services offered at this 48-bed facility are comprehensive and what Oklahomans need. Some sobering statistics for policymakers and our community to consider. 4.1 of adults in Oklahoma had serious thoughts of suicide in the past year. 1 in 10 students reported attempting suicide in the past 12 months. Each week, approximately 300 Oklahomans are admitted for urgent care or crisis mental health services. 1 out of every 5 Oklahomans is in need for mental health and addiction treatment services. Adults who have serious mental health issues die on average 25 years younger than the general population, mainly from preventable health conditions. These statistics come from our state government. As a local elected, I see this play out at the granular level with tragedies like the mental health decline and breakdown of Norman's beloved cookie queen, Shannon Hanchett, and this past month with the death on the tracks, wherein the person reported missing by their parents was also somebody struggling with their mental health. So the services that will be offered here are critical. The Behavioral Health Center at Porter Village will open in June, and referrals accepted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they accept Medicaid, Medicare, TRICARE, and most private insurances. Last, I just want to publicly acknowledge the great work our city staff did in securing $14.5 million in competitive tax credits from the Oklahoma Housing Finance Agency, OFA, at the May 2024 Board of Trustees meeting. Crimson Flats will be 75 units, 40 of which are 1 bedroom. Single room occupancy is desperately needed in Norman. And it will be required that the facility accept Section 8 vouchers. Congrats again, and what a huge win for Norman. Thank you.
No announcements this week.
Councilmember?
Okay, I just wanted to say bravo to our Norman Youth Council. That was incredibly impressive, and they were giving major future council member vibes. I don't know if they want to do it, but they were definitely giving that. And then 4 weeks from tonight will be my last council meeting, and on that night, I'm very short when I speak, but I will have all the comments then, so I'll save it till then, Mayor.
Councilmember?
Thank you. Also would just echo the comments about the youth council and encourage any Ward 7 parents out there or high school kids, if you're interested, to please sign up. I don't think we can ever have too many kids interested in how the city government works. And just as a kid that grew up here, I know that I don't really recall any education growing up about what a city government actually does or what a city council does. There was discussion about the state government and the federal government, but there was really nothing about that I can recall about what the city government does and places like the water treatment plant and municipal court and all those things. So it is really helpful, I think, for kids to learn that. Helpful for adults too. So definitely encourage you all to apply for that. And then also want to encourage everybody that if you can attend, our final budget meeting is next Tuesday here at City Hall at 2 p.m., where we will consider adoption of the city's final budget for this upcoming fiscal year. If you have, all of the budget documents are available online for anybody in the public to read over. And if you have any questions about that, any comments, suggestions, last-minute amendments you want us to propose, now would be the time to do that. And so, and then if you have any comments or suggestions or any things like that you want to make on the day of the budget, it is an open meeting and it will be broadcast live on the City of Norman YouTube channel as well. And then it will be available for replay after for anybody that wants to watch it. So that's really the, we do a lot of things the City Council does, but really our number one job is to approve or oversee and approve a city budget. So next week meeting is one of the biggest ones we have every year. And it's not uncommon that we don't have very few people that come and speak. So I don't think we had one commenter last year, maybe one. So we've had meetings that have gone for hours too. So it just depends. So yeah, next Tuesday at 2 p.m. here at City Hall. And then also wanted to remind everybody that we had the Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting last Thursday, where we got an update from city staff, as we usually do, on the public transit system. And then we also had a discussion with the Regional Transit Authority, our representative, one of our representatives on that board that's exploring the metropolitan area regional transit solutions, including rail-based options connecting Norman to Edmond, Will Rogers Airport, and Tinker Air Force Base, with downtown OKC as the central hub. And one of the highlights was that in the decision last week that the Oklahoma City Council made about picking a location for their new downtown arena, being where the current Cox Center, former Myriad, is. One of the pieces of that is a section of the property being developed into a transportation hub to complement the Santa Fe station that's across the street. So that's part of it that I'm pretty excited about seeing what they come up with. And then just having other options in the metro area for getting around besides having to drive on I-35. Because I'm one of the people that I don't believe if the turnpike happens that it will really help with traffic for Norman residents at all trying to get to the city. So the only way we can really address that is by providing other transportation options for people that want to use it. So definitely encourage everybody to follow along with the RTA process. They do have a website. They have regular meetings, and former Governor Brad Henry is the current chair of that board. And so you can watch the replay of that Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting on the City of Norman YouTube channel. And then also wanted to echo the same comments about the Crimson Flats. Very excited about that project. It's the largest affordable housing project that the city's ever done or been a part of that I know of. And it's something we've talked about a lot. We're able to leverage federal funds and work with a private developer that specializes in this type of project. And then they were able, with our staff, able to leverage several $1 million more to help get that project actually done. And so it's not going to solve housing affordability issues in Norman. It's not going to solve homelessness. But helping more people stay in their homes and not end up homeless in the first place is what I think is the best way we can reduce those numbers. So very excited about that project, and I hope we're able to see some more like it in the near future. And then lastly, just I had the opportunity to go by the YFAC last week and see the Adidas tournament that we hosted there last week. Trey Young was there watching as well. But it featured over 200 teams from across the country that were here for 3 days. playing in the tournament. And it was just real exciting to see the facility full of people in exactly what we built it for. And, it's open 7 days a week, and local kids are getting to use it. We're bringing visitors here to use it. And so it was just exciting to see something go from an idea on paper to now it's in use that way. And then I also wanted to mention that the OU baseball team is hosting a regional this weekend in Norman, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So there will be several collegiate baseball teams in Norman this weekend to see who gets to go on to the College World Series. So I hope the OU's able to make it out, but either way, I'm excited that we'll be able to showcase Norman to all those visiting teams, and hopefully they'll spend some money while they're in town. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a moment, I'd like to introduce Norman's very first Assistant City Manager, Ms. Shannon Stevenson, sitting in the back row. Today was her first day, so of course we want to make it a nice long one for her. So she comes to us with an immense background in transportation and transit, things from the COG out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and she's going to add instant value to our team. So welcome, Shannon.
Mayor has no announcements. Next item is the consent docket. Excuse me. This item is placed on the agenda so that the City Council, by unanimous consent, can designate those routine agenda items that they wish to be approved or acknowledged by one motion. If any item proposed does not meet with the approval of all council members, then that item will be heard in regular order. Staff recommends that item 2 through item 18 be placed on the consent docket. Need a motion to place items 2 through 18 on the consent docket.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and second. Motion on the floor is to place items 2 through 18 on the consent docket. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to place items 2 through 18 on the consent docket passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Are there any comments from council regarding any item on the consent docket? Motion on the floor is to approve the consent docket. You may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to approve the consent docket passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Non-consent items. Item 19. Conducting and closing the second public hearing for the FYE 2025 City of Norman proposed operating and capital budgets. Need a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
And a second. Motion on the floor is to open the public hearing. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast. Open the public hearing passes unanimously.
I'd like to recognize Mr. Anthony Francis, Kim, that was fast, to make a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just want to say I resent Jeannie's comments on the budget because I think the budget's exciting. It's
Shift
our
over
plan
towards
for
the
next-
microphone so they can hear you out.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's our plan and our goals for next year, and it's a joyous occasion, so. So I'm excited to open the second public hearing on the city manager's proposed budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. This is the seventh public meeting on our upcoming budget and is one of the last opportunities that the public has to offer feedback. This is the culmination of months of hard work from city staff, city council, and the public on our upcoming budget. As always, our budget documents are available online on our website, or the public can request hard copies of our budget from finance staff. So I'll start here with an overview, a brief overview of the projected revenues and expenditures for next fiscal year. 2025, all funds Projected total revenues are $307,477,182. General sales tax accounts for 30% of that, followed by fees and charges at 23%, and then other taxes at 13%. All funds projected total expenditures for fiscal year 25 projected at $924,185. The largest chunk is public safety at 22.6%. Of course, that's police and fire department, followed by capital improvements, and then the water department at 12.5%. Moving on to the general fund, 2025 general fund revenues projected $108,486,122. Of course, the largest chunk of that is sales tax, 64%. I'll take this opportunity to remind everyone that the state of Oklahoma is the only state in the nation that cannot use property tax for operations, so sales tax is the biggest chunk. Followed next by internal charges, which is the overhead and other operating internal costs spread over all departments. And then finally, general fund expenditures projected for fiscal year ending 2025 at $108,316,271. Police accounts for 29% of those expenditures, followed by Public Works at 20%, and then the fire department at 19%. So with that, I'd welcome and encourage public input on our fiscal year ending 2025 budget.
Thank you, ma'am. This is an opportunity for members of the public to make comment regarding this item. Remarks should be directed to council only. Once public comments have concluded, council may choose to answer your questions. Madam Clerk, are there any speakers registered for this item?
Yes, Mayor, we'll start with Dan Munson.
Dan Munson from Ward 6. Norman On Demand is on track to serve about 30,000 riders. Estimated cost for FY25 is $800,000. The estimated cost per rider is $26.63. We're charging about $2 per rider. I believe we need to increase the cost to $5 per rider to help offset our costs. Additionally, we should ask the University of Oklahoma to increase their annual contribution to $250,000 to help make this program financially sustainable. OU's annual operating budget is $1.4 billion. Additionally, we should consider asking Norman Regional if they would like to participate in this program, because this service is bringing people to their facilities. Norman Regional's annual operating budget is over $500 million. Has there been a decrease in DUIs in the city of Norman and at OU since this program started in August? How are we measuring the effectiveness of the Safe Ride program? I'm going to switch over to the fixed route transit program now. In Go Norman Transit Plan, we're projecting to increase 35-foot fixed bus inventory from 9 units to 18 from FY24 to FY30. How are we going to pay for the additional 9 buses? It's my understanding that CNG buses are around $550,000 each. Gillig has a manufacturer's recall on batteries manufactured between 2019 and 2022. Does this recall impact the 2 electric buses that we purchased? Do we know what the estimated replacement time for batteries will be if they are impacted by the recall? Have we considered marketing the ad spaces on buses differently? It's my understanding that a fully wrapped bus can generate between $2,500 and $4,000 per month. We're projecting to make $12,000 in revenue annually. It doesn't seem like we're maximizing our revenue potential to help offset the costs of the transit program. I believe we need to revisit collecting fares on the fixed route systems. To be clear, I'm not advocating that we collect fares on the smaller cutaway fleet or vans. The fixed route system represents a much smaller percentage of the overall fleet and the highest number of riders. Embark should be able to help us understand how to successfully collect fares because they've been doing it for decades in Oklahoma City. Thank you.
Next, we have Evan Dunn.
Dunn, 1400 Garfield Avenue, Ward 7. So there were a couple thoughts that I've had over just the past few weeks. In the budget, I don't see any incentives that are, or any capital allocated for incentivizing gardening or food foresting. Nor do I see any projections for there to be a plan to utilize and to create some type of citywide program in which the unhoused can contribute to these solutions. I'd really like to see some action on these ideas that I think we all know can have a positive impact.
Thank you, sir.
Cheryl-Ann Denso.
Good evening, Council, Norman Public, Cheryl-Ann Denso, Wards 4 and 6. I would like you to be aware that the budget is based on multiple funding sources. And one particular funding source that contributes a lot to our community is the community service block grants. And if we're not holding our subcontractors accountable, those federal funds can disappear quickly if they're not held to the same rules and regulations that's written within the federal guidelines. Particularly if people engage in bypassing those particular rules and regulations. I suggest that you do more due diligence in making sure that everyone follows the rules of all subcontractors underneath these federal guidelines. Thank you.
Cindy Rogers.
Good evening, Cindy Rogers, still Ward 4. Yeah, budget's exciting stuff, I agree. I think budget documents are important things, and I appreciate the due diligence and the ability to actually follow along all the assumptions that are being built into these for our annual projections. I was taking a look at the capital improvement budget. Fascinating stuff. And just did a little, back of the envelope. So since 2012, we had voter-approved borrowing debt of almost $200 million. And that is 2012, 2019, 2021, and 2023. And I'd just like to stress that, you'll have an item coming before you soon that's $600 million in debt costs that could possibly not go to voters. And I think that's we should keep that in mind, that also if you look at the total all funds end of year balance, it's $100 million. $600 million is like 6 years worth of that. So I think we need to be mindful of that. And also, I like that we stress how reliant we are on sales taxes. So we need to be very careful about giving any of those away for capital projects. And I would stress that if we're going to use sales taxes for capital projects, again, we should make sure that those are voter approved. Thank you.
Are there any final comments from council on this? Hearing none. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and second. The motion on the floor is to close the public hearing. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been close the public hearing, passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. And just as a note, as Councilmember Holman said, City Council consideration of the budget will be done on June the 4th at 2:00 p.m. in this room. Item number 20, an ordinance rezoning property at 2505 West Main Street from SPUD, Simple Planned Unit Development District, to C2, General Commercial District. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on second reading, section by section.
Motion to adopt.
Motion is second. Is there a representative of the applicant here tonight to make a presentation? Would you please come forward, sir?
Good evening. My name is Kent Mace. I'm with MBLS. We're the engineers and surveyors involved in the project. I'm just here to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from council regarding this? Councilmember Holman?
Yeah. Would you maybe just give a brief summary about what exactly you're planning to do? I recall this property being in front of us before for other use, so.
It's a large tract. It has a large building on it. Basically, we're just breaking out a little piece for a Breaks Plus to be added to it. So the business that's there is going to stay there. It's going to continue as it always was, and then a little tract will be a new building, a new business coming to Norman.
A new building or
a new building?
New part underneath the building you've already got?
No, it's a new building.
An add-on, okay.
Yeah, a separate tract.
Okay, I wasn't sure about if what was already there was staying or not, so I appreciate that. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on the item. Remarks should be directed to council only. Once public comments have concluded, council may choose to answer your questions. Madam Clerk, is there anybody signed up?
Evan Dunn?
I prefer Stephen.
Okay.
Okay.
Cheryline Denso? And Cindy Rogers? Okay.
Excellent. The motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on second reading. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast. The ordinance upon second reading passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on final reading.
Second.
Have a motion and second. The motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on final reading. Council members, you got to push my button. Council members, you may.
All vote. Motion to adopt the ordinance upon final reading passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 21, a preliminary plat for replat of Salyer Edition located at 2505 West Main Street. I'll entertain a motion to approve or reject the preliminary plat.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. This is a companion item to the previous item. Are there any further questions from council? Hearing none. Are there any further public comments?
The same would apply, Evan, Cheryl Ann, and Cindy. Okay.
Okay, excellent. The motion on the floor is to approve the preliminary plat. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to approve the preliminary plat passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 22, an ordinance amending the planned unit development established in Ordinance 0212210 to amend the site plan and PUD narrative for the property located at 3766 East Robinson Street. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on second reading, section by section.
Motion to adopt.
A motion and second. Is there a representative of the applicant to make a presentation? Would you come forward, sir?
Hello. Let's see, I think I have a couple slides in here. My name is Jeffrey Arcee. I own 3766 East Robinson Street. The reason for this PUD is it's an amendment to an existing PUD. I was here, 3 years ago, 2021, when I first started this business. It's still a very small business, but it has grown. I left my corporate job in 2020 to start this up. It's a Amphibious Power Sports is the name. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with it, but I started it because it's a very fulfilling business to me. We service, sell vehicles and parts for motorcycles, jet skis, essentially toys for adults. It's a fulfilling business to me because there's a lot of problems in the world and everybody likes to argue about how to solve them. But to put toys out there and just something that's fun, I think is something that's great for mental health and just the overall community. So that's a little intro about the business. So when I first started in 2020, came here in 2021, I had a plan and it got approved. But now, 3 years forward, we have, reality just kind of set in. We've outgrown the current plan and the current building that we're operating out of. So this is simply an amendment to allow the 2 new buildings and also a driveway modification. So this is just a CAD design of the property. In the back, it's just a very forest wooded area. There's a lot more trees than that. That's just so you'll see the 2 new buildings. That's what we're looking to add to the property, as well as the driveway. This uses remain the same. I do want to add that we've had a significant change in the amount of service work. We've started doing service work more than anticipated, just because that's kind of when the economy is not good, people still need their stuff fixed, not as much as they spend. They spend more on getting stuff fixed versus buying new toys and parts and upgrades to those. So, but yeah, these 2 new buildings allow us to continue our business and keep the site clean. Right now, if you go out there, there's just lots of vehicles kind of scattered everywhere. On the overview, the red cars, I only had cars and boats to work with, so that's why it's cars and boats. But the red cars represents where inventory that we are selling, our company-owned vehicles for sale, would be sat outside. And same with the boats would also be, we have jet skis, so that would be the watercraft. Where you see the blue cars, those are areas in which, it's kind of parking, temporary placement of vehicles. So you kind of see the 3 out back behind that building. That's where we constantly are moving things in and out of the shop. it's important to note that this property, the overview doesn't show that the front, I guess the way you're looking at it on the screen, the left side where the larger of the new buildings will be is on top of a hill. So everything back behind that is, you really can't see it from the road besides unless you're at the right angle and looking at the right time. So yeah, that's kind of an overview of how the site should look. There was, since doing this, which by the way, I had to put in a permit to know if I needed to rezone this. So I did that, and since I was told I had to rezone it, I figured we might as well address this issue too, and that is the driveway. When we first had this approved, that you see the plan on the left, it shows a single concrete approach across from Bryant Street. And if you look at the plan on the right, that is what I'm also proposing along with the buildings. Because we have, it seems fine when you're planning, but in reality, we have a serious safety issue with only having one driveway, because we have, big trucks like FedEx and the delivery drivers, and we also have people coming in with trailers. So we have to have some kind of turnaround where they're not backing up. I mean, big trailers backing up is just, it's a big safety risk. There's that house that's out there that as a trailer house, we were originally planning on just building our own house. We ended up selling our house in the city, and we rehabbed that house. It's a lot nicer now, and we live out there. So I've got kids playing out there. The current situation is that there has to be trucks driving in front of the house, potentially backing up in front of the house. It's not okay in my point of view, safety wise. There's like a cut-in gravel secondary approach that is just, I've let people use it because I would rather them do that and use a driveway that's not approved than run over a kid. So that's what's currently happening, and I want to make it, if we're doing this, we need to make everything right, how it's exactly going to be. And so on this new plan, we maintain the existing shared driveway. So there's a parcel right next to us, and in the original plan, we were to remove that shared driveway and just scoot it over to where it's an independent driveway for just the parcel next to us. But if we can maintain that, we can, it's more efficient for everyone, and that is we can do a turnaround. This is the closest thing I can get to complying with engineering design standards. The reason I'm having to go through you guys to get this approved is that per engineering design standards, you can only have one driveway per 330 feet on a 50-mile-an-hour road. And so, but the reason that they can have that driveway in their lot and still be not 330 feet apart is just because of the law or ordinance that says you can't deny access. So it's kind of I would call it a bureaucratic gridlock, because by moving that driveway over to the other parcel, you're not creating, there's no safety difference. There's still two driveways right there. We're moving that one, 20 feet over. So I think that it is absolutely in everyone's best interest to go with this new driveway plan. And that's it. There's a little animation of what it should look like from the road when we're done. Yeah. Do I take a seat?
Opportunity for members of the public to, oh, I'm sorry. Are there any questions from council? Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Hudson, can I ask you a few questions? Okay, so in the staff report, it says that the current driveway, which was talked about a lot, was never paved. And there's issues talking about that. And then can you speak to why the planning commission voted 0-7 to approve, to recommend it?
The drive, excuse me, I'm sorry. The drive that was proposed under the previously adopted was never installed. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Correct. So, as he stated, I think just a second ago, he's been utilizing the dirt drive to the east. I believe that's correct. To the east, yes. So the drive that's shown on the site plan that was previously approved as the concrete approach and everything across from Bryant, no, that's never been installed.
Okay.
As far as planning commission, there were a lot of concerns with overuse of the lot. There were specific comments by planning commissioners about that. And I honestly don't remember exactly what they were. I think that there's some minutes.
Would the movement of the driveway that was discussed, would that help with the safety concerns that are in the staff report? Would that address those concerns or no?
The safety concerns, which ones? The one that the applicant spoke of?
Yeah.
For the trucks entering and such? I'm sorry, I can't answer that because that would be on his property. I'm not sure what his concerns are. But as far as the distance requirements that traffic has, that is their safety concern.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Grant?
I was curious about the
Sorry.
stormwater situation on this site as well. Like, I was glancing through planning commission. I didn't see that. I did see the public works part. Was that addressed at all?
So the property's rural in nature. That he's not going over his coverage requirements that are out there on site right now. So there's been no requirements to install any detention or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Holman?
Thank you. So I see in the Planning Commission notes about mention of things that have happened on the property that were not part of what was approved before. Are there structures or things that have been done that do not fall under the PUD that was originally approved? Was kind of unclear about that.
Are you speaking about the structure that has been built without permit?
I guess so.
If
That's what the commissioners were referring to.
There's a structure out there on the property that has been built without permit at this point.
When was that built? Or
I
do we
think
know?
it was constructed in the last few months. Mr. Arcee has been notified that he needs to get a building permit and has not yet.
Okay. And then there was comments about concern about the use going beyond what was anticipated then. I mean, businesses grow, so that's understandable, but concerned about it not really fitting that area perhaps anymore. I don't, this is just reading their comments, and I did watch the meeting too when it happened, but.
Yeah, Councilmember Holman, I think that that's what they were talking about, was just that when it was approved previously, it was uses X, Y, and Z, and as Mr. Arcee has stated, he's, as you said, his business is growing, and so I think that was one of the commissioner's concern, is that it has expanded to a point that it concerned them.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Councilmember Nash?
All right.
You're live.
Awesome. Mr. Arcee, Arcee, however it's pronounced. Remember, we we spoke for the first time in 2021. I think it was around April when he first applied. I think he withdrew that application.
Yes.
And then brought it forward after I'd come off of council. It's kind of amazing to see that you've been able to bring this business this far and expand, and looks like you've had a lot of success doing it. And I think it's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
But with that success, the higher intensity use of the area, when we grant these PUDs for projects like this, it's with an anticipation that's a lower, less intense operation than, say, downtown Main Street.
Mhm.
Obviously, there's going to be a threshold where you get to that cutoff when it's just not appropriate for the area. And, with all this success, maybe it's about time that you start considering finding and leasing some commercial property to expand to a larger space that the cost to put these buildings up probably cover you for a couple of years to get a place in kind of a more commercial corridor of the city. I don't know if this would be commercial or industrial use, but either way, with that, I think that this level of intensity, and from the pictures that I've seen, I think it's kind of taking that step beyond that comfort level where it's going to be having a negative impact on the surrounding properties and the safety of the people living in the area. That, in addition to the designs, the issues with the designs going contrary to established engineering design criteria, and I think that first time when he called me, there were some issues with your application and your approach, and I remember you withdrew it. Maybe this is a situation where you can withdraw it, kind of go back to the planning phase and design something that's a little bit more appropriate, or consider expanding to a commercial space.
So, 2 parcels west of me, there is a church with, 3 or 4 times the square footage, sitting in the same, closeness to the road. They have a large parking lot with lots of cars coming in, for church events on Sundays, weekends. And then 2 lots to the east, there's another health eating disorder place. And they probably have about the same amount of clients that I do. And even further east, there is another metal building that is the same size, probably bigger, sitting about in that vicinity to the road. I've had to put a deposit down just so that I could get a permit, because I was told that, I asked is this going to be a deviation from the original site plan? Like, obviously it's a deviation, but am I going to have to go get it rezoned? And I was told, put in a permit and see what happens. So I did. But to get the permit, I had to pay a large deposit to get engineer blueprint stamped, drawings to do such a thing. And so not only that, but we're actually a Department of Defense Skillbridge partner. We've got my current full-time guy. He's a Navy veteran. He's been working there 1 year now, and his pay is dependent on this. I've promised him a pay raise as soon as we move into the new building. Not only that, we have another intern starting June 1st, and if this building is not built, he's also going to be out of a job. So there's a lot on my end weighing on this, and that's why I couldn't, when I went to Planning Commission, they offered me, hey, why don't you go back and redo this? And I would have loved to clarify everyone's concerns, but because of the time crunch and my current situation, I was unable to do that.
In terms of a time crunch, I think you'd be in luck leasing out a space with a building that's already constructed. You walk right into an already completed building and completed area to
Yeah,
Just in
I mean,
your
if,
operation.
if I could find a space for lease that was a cost that would allow me to, the growth of this business has been 100% organic. I own the property, we've done zero marketing. I have very low overhead, and that's why I have a lot of customers, because I have flexibility. If I was to go into a place that I had to pay $4,000 a month, it just wouldn't work. My business plan wouldn't work. And I want to speak to the permit situation. I have applied for the building I erected. It was a covered parking area to get certain vehicles out of the hail that was coming. And I spoke with someone in the permitting place, and I did apply for that permit after erecting it, and the code part of it has been approved. But both the permits for both these buildings are being denied or still pending because of the PUD thing. So just throwing that out there.
All right, well, yeah, I still think it's remarkable you've had this kind of success, and I feel confident that with this amount of business, people are coming back to you not because you're the cheapest in town, but because of the quality of the work and skill put into it. And even if that means increasing your prices by a few percent to cover the overhead with a leased property, the expanded space would then enable you to scale your operation far more than what you can possibly do here.
Yeah. I think I remember specifically you made the comment to me the property might be more valuable as A2. And it's funny, if I would have never had this zoned in the first place and gone to get the city's permission, the permit for the building would have gone through. So it just sucks. But if that's how you guys feel,
You done?
Well, I think covers all my questions, concerns, and thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got some more for you. One of my comments is it's easy to compare what you were mentioning, some churches and doing things like that. The engineering design criteria came about after those buildings were built. And so now you come in under the new code. The place that I lived out on 24th and Rock Creek had a double driveway. We shared a driveway. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But it was legal at the time. So a lot of times that's not a comparison. Yeah, Councilmember Ball?
You actually answered the question I was going to ask about, is if you had applied for the permit, and so it is pending for the
Yes.
building that you've already
Yes.
erected. So you getting that taken care of. Looking at what your PUD's already approved for, I mean, you could have a school there, which would be buses coming in and out. You could have a plant nursery. You could have a medical marijuana commercial grow. There's all kinds of stuff that could be happening on that property right now that would have a lot more traffic, a lot more trucks, a lot more impact than a couple people with jet skis coming in. So since you've taken care, and I'm all about letting people utilize their land. My parents started a business with a set of tongs and a lay-down machine. And they had it in my grandma's arena behind her house. And it was there for 2 or 3 years until they were able to get set up and get going. So I applaud you for what you're doing and what you've done for the community. So thank you for answering that question and keep it up.
Councilmember Schuler?
Yeah, I'm not sure who was here to represent Public Works. Is it you, Mr. Riesland, to talk about traffic? Or site plan, kind of the explanation of why Public Works is not in favor of the current setup and why it's imperative that the new driveway that was on the first PUD be erected in the way that kind of aligns with Bryant that's across the street.
Sure. David Riesland, transportation engineer. Anytime we can have a driveway line up with a street or another driveway, it's a win-win for everybody. Because if you're on a 2-lane road and you've got vehicles each trying to turn left, they're not butting with each other. They can each make their turn. So we like that. Because it doesn't meet the spacing requirements in the engineering design criteria, there is an avenue where I said this at the Planning Commission, he can come to the Public Works Department and submit a request for variance. We will consider that request and then act upon his request. He's not done that. So all I've got to go on is the engineering design criteria, and it doesn't meet that.
Okay, so there's two, for what I can see, on Google Maps right now, there's kind of two access points that are on either side of that intersection where Bryant kind of comes down, tees into East Robinson. And so I think there was a question about that western kind of dirt road that is continued to be used. I think that was addressed at Planning Commission. And I'm guessing that's like some of the turnaround situation. Do you think that they're, based on your knowledge of the site plan and kind of the site, is there ample room for turnaround if that one singular drive is, I guess, aligned with Bryant? Like, how could there be a turnaround spot, for trucks or bigger?
You know, he's got this building that he's erected. He could always make a circle around that building.
So you think it is possible?
Well, it's very possible, yes.
Okay, to have a singular access, but also have a turnaround to make the safety kind of work on the site, okay?
Absolutely.
Ms. Hudson. So we've talked about the unpermitted structure that is currently on the lot. So the applicant says that there are permits pending for that. Is that true? Because based on what you said earlier, I understood it to mean that that process has not even been started.
Well, I visited with staff today. It was my understanding. So on 3/21, a stop work order was posted for the accessory structure being erected on the property. On 4/14, the code was notified that the accessory structure had continued to be constructed. There was a citation issued on 5/1. Like I said, if there has been a building permit that has been applied for, my staff did not respond to my email today, but that's the information that I have.
Okay, so essentially we have a non-compliant structure on this plot of land that we've already previously rezoned. So I guess I can say this for comments later, but my concern is that there's been continual non-compliance with things that have been said within the current PUD. And what's to say if we approve this, that there will be continued non-compliance? That's a concern that I have moving forward. But I'll save the rest of my comments for after I hear any public comment or protests that I know that we have several from.
Councilmember Farmer?
So, Jane, hi, don't go anywhere. My questions were sort of addressed with the submitting a variance with the site plan, so that has not happened for the driveway.
Correct.
Okay. Is it common practice to approve this type of thing with a delinquent permit and without submitting a variance? I mean, we'd be approving something that hasn't formally been submitted, right?
Well, we can get the permits. We can get the plan review completed. The inspectors can go out and view the structure and make sure that it's code compliant. Those can be taken care of. Applying for the variance, that needs to happen, so review. And that doesn't mean that the variance would get approved. I mean, they would have to review it and everything. But, those are two separate processes, issues that need to be addressed as the applicant moves forward.
So the appropriate course of action would be to submit the variance first, and then council would have a more cohesive plan to approve.
And there's a couple other items in there in the staff report regarding the utilities concerns, and I'm sure you guys read that as well, that those would have to be addressed as he moves forward too.
Okay, thank you.
This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on this item. Remarks should be directed to council only. Once public comments have been concluded, council may choose to answer your questions. Madam Clerk, is anybody signed up to speak?
Yes, we'll start with Mike 4. Hello, my name is Mike Farr. I live at 3735 East Robinson, which is catty corner across the street from the property we're talking about. He did not get the permit to build the building. He is put in to have stuff rezoned. It was approved. He has not done any of this construction that it was approved by y'all. So the neighbors do not think that anything should be approved anymore. I brought in 11 signatures on adjacent properties. One of them, I found out after I got it, was not one that I should have got, but I was told I could get more of other neighbors. I haven't been back out. There's 5 pieces of property. I was not able to get a hold of anybody because the people do not live there or were never at home. One place was up for sale. It had a contract pending. But everybody that I got to sign the petition against this is wholeheartedly against it. It is devaluing our property across the street from him. The neighbors that live next to him, he has stuff parked up against their fence, and they are aggravated. The other neighbors said, we will sign any petition to keep him from be able to move forward. We went to the hearing back during 21 with the Planning Commission, and that was turned down. Y'all approved his PUD then, and the neighbors are upset about that. But anything that has been approved, he is not continuing working forward with. He said in the Planning Commission meeting last month that I went to, that in the building that was originally his shop, he is now using the upstairs as a marijuana grow house. So the neighbors do not want any other thing approved by y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Evan Dunn. I defer. Cheryl Ann Denso.
Cheryl Ann Denso, Wards 4 and 6. Okay, so I see a little bit of a dichotomy here. On the one hand, council wants to change zoning and with the with the ADUs and parking on streets and all, to make zoning areas more comfortable for people, right? Then on the other hand, we got somebody who's working hard at a business and, you know, and has a PUD in place. It's in a semi-rural area. And trying to do business, you know, in the city. So, you know, these ideas of non-compliance really get me because from what I can see, viewing stuff in this community, is that, you know, there's even some council members that are non-compliant with in their behavior in public. Okay? So where do you draw the line? Okay? Where do you draw the line when it comes to that kind of stuff? Do you beat somebody up because maybe they did something a little bit different? Okay? Because I don't see any hand slapping of people who are in charge pulling some shenanigans. Okay? That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, ma'am.
Cindy Rogers.
Cindy Rogers, Ward 4, not even close to being a neighbor, but the broader neighbor of the city. And I really appreciate this discussion. And I think one of the biggest concerns with PUDs and SPUDs is exactly trying to resolve conflict between neighbors. And my understanding is the process is it's supposed to bring forward an outcome so that then neighbors aren't annoyed, or ways to offer up, okay, this is how I can do my business and respect you. Doesn't look like that's what's happening in this situation. I'm always concerned when, people sort of do stuff and then ask for permission later. We've had some situations with music venues and things like that in town. So I appreciate the discussion, but it seems like the purpose of this process is really neighbors together. So I don't know, maybe Councilmember Nash is the guy to get everybody together to find a resolution that everybody can live with.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any final comments from council regarding this? Councilmember Holman.
Thank you. So I did vote for this a couple years ago, and mainly because of it being a PUD and narrowing the scope of what it would be down so that neighbors could have assurance that whatever we were voting for was what was going to happen. I mean, given the response from the Planning Commission and a unanimous vote not to recommend this, and then the questions we've had here today, I would probably offer to the applicant a suggestion to withdraw this and go back to work with the neighbors and the city staff. And I only say this because I do appreciate your business and I appreciate seeing it grow too. But if this request fails tonight, you'll have to wait a year to come back. And so that's just something I want you to take into consideration, because I don't really want it to fail. I don't want your business to fail. And I appreciate the employees you have and their jobs. But I think it would also be difficult for the majority of council to approve this as it is right now. So a withdrawal would allow you to work this out and come back at a later date, sooner than a year from now. So that's just a friendly offer of advice.
You may answer that if you wish, sir. You may answer that if you wish, sir.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the compassion in that, but kind of all in at this point, so that's my response.
Thank you.
Councilmember Foreman?
So I'm very mad at you, Councilmember Stephen Tyler Holman. You said literally everything I was going to say, literally everything, starting with that I did vote for this the first time. It was a very contentious item, and I think some of my council down that way voted against it. I'm maybe looking at one. No, Brandy, I know did. So it was not very popular at the time, and so it seems to become more contentious, and I would have trouble approving something that still had a lot of work to do to get there. And so like Councilmember Holman, I was also going to suggest withdrawing the application, because I do not feel at this time that you have the support of it. And I would hate for you to have to wait a whole year to try to do this. And so I would just friendly encourage you to maybe reconsider that. We can postpone it. We can even try for a date certain, give you a guaranteed time that you could come back. But I would strongly reconsider that.
Once again, I appreciate it. I kind of forgot what I was going to say. I just want to, this is, the only changes to this PUD that I'm proposing is the driveway and the buildings.
Right, but you haven't submitted a variance for that, and so that's something that we wouldn't.
I wish I would have known about that. That was the first time I've ever heard of that throughout this whole process.
Ms. Hudson, would you like to, can you speak to that for just a second? I know this is not normally in order. I'm not even gonna look at Brenda, but.
I was actually just at planning, sorry, guess I need to get over here with the microphone before Brenda yells at me, huh? At Planning Commission, Mr. Riesland stated that the applicant needed to submit a request for a variance, and he has not.
Okay, yeah, we're trying to help you out here to the best that we can. I mean, I would really strongly reconsider that.
Okay, let me have the council members speak. You've had an opportunity to respond. Councilmember Ball.
I was going to echo Councilor Foreman, Councilor Holman. Get the permit for the building that you've already constructed. Talk to Public Works about the variance. I want to see every business succeed, and I just don't feel like you have the support up here. So either let us postpone this, or withdraw and resubmit. That would be my suggestion.
Councilmember Schuler.
Yeah, echoing more of what my fellow council members have said. I think that it's important to note the year. If this does fail, that you will not be able to come forward for a whole year. And I think that would put your current building that you've put money and time and investment into in jeopardy, because there's no way that they're going to approve a permit for something that is not listed on the site plan, that is the current zoning ordinance with the PUD. So that's money that will be wasted. I think we really are trying to help you find a path forward. And I think that it is really unique that we get a unanimous vote no of the Planning Commission. I think this is probably only the second one that I've seen in the 3 years that I've been on council. And both of those times have been very kind of contentious and with a lot of neighbor protest. And I think it is really important with a PUD, like you are writing your own zoning ordinance. And to the point of that, it really is to build trust with the surrounding properties, because this is unique and special. And it's to kind of hold the property owner accountable to the things that they said that they were gonna do within that document. It is a legal document. And as of right now, you are in non-compliance with the legal document that you drafted and that we approved. And so I think it's really hard for us to be able to move forward with that. So I think staff, based on kind of the conversations that I've had, have really tried to counsel you on these things. I think in between Planning Commission and now, and kind of through this whole process, I would say that staff is often not there to be a thorn in anybody's side, but to really have, compliance with the laws that we've passed as a community. And often they give, I think, really good advice to applicants. So I implore you, I think at this point, to either postpone, a month to working with your neighbors, if there's something that can be done with that, and also to work with our Public Works Department to figure out either a variance or, what the site plan can look like to actually allow proper turnaround and access that makes you feel safe and comfortable with how vehicles are circulating on your property. Because, yeah, I think it's just really, really challenging for us to approve it as is.
Councilmember Nash.
Kind of learning. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. Just learn something new every day. I'm looking at the protest map and seeing, there's 19 parcels, 10 of them protested, but it says 39.9% protest within notification area. I'd always assumed that was the percentage of parcels, not the technical in the area. So I guess I'm the last one to learn that? Okay. Neat. Well, so my comment, I guess, is just to the public to educate others who just happen to have missed that information their entire lives. Sorry.
The motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance.
I was just going to respond to their comment. I never got to.
Go ahead and respond.
Well, so a request to, sorry, what was the advice that?
As the other council members, to either postpone, withdraw, to allow you more time to work with your neighbors, to work with Public Works on a better access point that they could get behind in terms of circulation, that makes you feel safe with what's happening on your property, but also is in compliance with those design standards for traffic.
So a postponement, or that process would look like what?
You'd have to give me a date that you want to postpone it to, and I would say that would be within 60 days. Is there a limit on that? You can postpone it.
Withdraw the application.
Withdraw the application, postpone it until you're ready to go, after you've got all your.
So we can redo this in like 2 weeks?
If you could get it done, it wouldn't get back on the agenda in 2 weeks, but it would take us at least 30 days to get it back on the agenda, but it gives you some time to get it fixed.
So, yeah, I mean, whatever the soonest postponement date is,
January 5th.
I will do that because.
June 25th, January 5th, where'd I get that?
June
June 25th?
25th.
Is that acceptable to you?
The variance is the one thing I have not done. And that, I guess, was a miscommunication. Apparently it was said at the planning commission meeting, went right over my head. I will do that, so that I can say that I've done everything possible. But I do want to point out that, other than building a covered parking area, I'm not sure I don't know what other deviations from the original PUD. The fact that I don't have that driveway across from Bryant is simply because I don't have $50,000 to put into a concrete drive. That's not a cheap thing to do. So now that it is part of building this building, that building has got to have concrete. I've got the same contractors ready to do all of it. But yeah, it's just a comment I want to make about that, and I would like to request to postpone to
Okay.
whatever.
I've got a motion to,
Postpone to a date certain of June 25th.
I have a motion and second. The motion is to postpone until a date certain, 6/25/2024. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to postpone the item until June 25th, 2024 passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. All right.
Is it 28th or 25th?
Item number 23. Okay. An ordinance rezoning property located at 418 North Interstate Drive from PUD, Plan Unit Development District, and C2, General Commercial District, to SPUD, Simple Plan Unit Development District. I need a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on second reading, section by section.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
A motion and second. Is there a representative from the applicant? I'll get it right. Make a presentation.
Good evening, Mark Grubbs, 1800 South Sarah Road, on behalf of the application. This is this item and the following two items are companion items to this. This item is for a SPUD. What this is doing, the existing dealership is going to be demolished and redeveloped. It's incorporating the undeveloped lot to the north, so we have a C2 zoning and an existing PUD. So after meeting with staff, they recommended that we do one rezoning, and it matched the PUD for the original dealership. So we wrote an SPUD, which is just a new version of the PUD that makes it for smaller acreages, incorporating all the original items in the existing PUD. The following items are a companion item to vacate an easement, which there are no utilities in and no objections to from the utility companies, and also to do a plat to combine all the parcels. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Councilmember Holman?
Yes, thank you. So the current building's being demolished, looks like two new buildings, but is it just one bigger building? Is that
Correct.
okay? And then the current parcel that's a vacant lot now is all parking, is it, I mean, not
More
not
outdoor
parking, but for the
display.
dealership, is that right? Okay, so the main concern I have is just stormwater runoff. This being the last undeveloped lot on this interstate frontage road, at least between Main and Robinson. So stormwater is always an issue in every property in Norman now. So can you talk a little bit about how, if you're taking a current vacant lot, and it's not green really either, there's grass on it, but half of it's gravel too, so.
So we did a preliminary drainage study and submitted it to staff, which staff has reviewed. We are planning to do detention there for that, obviously, so that we can slow down the runoff.
An on-site detention pond?
Yes.
Underground or?
Currently it's proposed to be above ground.
Above ground.
But it'd be dry.
Okay, and then the, I guess, landscaping part of it, I know there's, I assume you won't be keeping any of that tree line on the fence there, but are you required to have any kind of landscaping, any trees?
So we're maintaining the buffer along the west that was in the original PUD. And then we're also adding additional landscaping to bring it up and meet code. So we'll meet city code on that.
Okay, and I guess it's a little bit different when you're talking about a car dealership that has parking space for displaying cars versus a commercial business that just needs a lot of parking. You know, recently we abolished, or say recently, been 3 years now, but we don't have parking minimums anymore for commercial. And so you're not required to have X amount of space per square footage anymore. Does this plan reflect the parking you think you need and not what you may have thought you had to have?
I will say that it reflects the parking that Kia thinks they need.
Like I put that. Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
All right. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on this item. Remarks should be directed to council only. Once public comments have concluded, council may choose to answer your questions. Madam Clerk, are there any speakers?
Evan Dunn? Cheryl Ann Denso? And Cindy Rogers. Okay.
All right. Final comment from council? Yes, I see. Council.
Just clarifying that you're not adding another driveway. I didn't see one on the plan, so I assume that keeping the existing curb cuts in front of the existing building. And then you'd be completing the sidewalk gap that's missing right there, I assume.
We are showing the two driveways as they currently are, and we're also, yes, and I didn't, forgive me, because I don't remember if there's sidewalk out there or not, but we do show sidewalk on our plans, so.
Okay. Yeah, is the only piece that's actually missing on the whole front, yeah.
So it's gonna be there one way or another.
I appreciate it, thank you.
All right. The motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on second reading. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to adopt the ordinance upon second reading passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on final reading.
Motion to adopt. Second.
A motion and second. The motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on final reading. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have to adopt the ordinance upon final reading passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 24, a preliminary plat for Sooner Kia of Norman, a simple planned unit development located at 418 North Interstate Drive. I'll entertain a motion to approve or reject the preliminary plat.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and second. This is a companion item to the previous item. Are there any further questions from council regarding this item? Hearing none. Are there any further public comments, Madam Clerk?
Evan, Cheryl Ann, and Cindy.
Excellent. Any, final comments? The motion on the floor is to approve the preliminary plat. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have to approve the preliminary plat passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Item number 25. I get that right? Yes. Item number 25. An ordinance closing a 17-foot utility easement generally located on the west side of Interstate I-35 and north. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on second reading, section by section.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
A motion to adopt in a second. Is there okay, this is a companion item. We're still in the same place. Do we have any other council? No. Do we have anybody that's signed up to speak?
The same three. Evan, Cheryl Ann.
Okay. Motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on second reading. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast. The ordinance upon second reading passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on final reading.
Second.
Motion second. Motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on final reading. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes. Motion to adopt the ordinance upon final reading passes unanimously.
Item number 26, an ordinance amending definitions, nonconforming uses, and off-street parking requirements in the zoning ordinance to remove parking requirements for accessory dwelling units where allowed, to clarify applicability of provisions to garage apartments, nonconformity, and to implement other language changes as consistent therewith. I need a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on second reading, section by section.
Motion to adopt.
I have a motion and second. Is there a representative from the applicant?
So, Jane Hudson, Planning Director. I am here to present to you the item regarding the parking requirements for the accessory dwelling units. Back in March, we had the actual ordinance for the accessory dwelling units before you. It was adopted and is moving forward. And at that time, we actually talked about what we were going to do about the parking requirements for those accessory dwelling units. Back in December, when we had taken all of this forward, there really was the community, everybody was very excited about getting the accessory dwelling unit ordinance adopted. And so we had some continued discussion requirements and what we would do with those, but we wanted to get the ADUs on the books, and we knew we were going to continue to talk about the parking requirements. So I'm back tonight to talk to you about those, and I already went over all that, didn't I? So, so what we're proposing is that if your accessory dwelling unit is within the 650 square foot range, and this is in the R1 and the R1A, you are not required to provide additional parking. In the other districts, which would be the RE, A1, A2, they can be larger than 650 square feet, and so you would be required to provide that parking. And in those areas, if you think about it, you're going to be on 2 acres, you're going to be on 5 acres, 10 acres, and you would have adequate space to provide the parking for that accessory dwelling unit. And sometimes they're changing the guest houses that have been in the agricultural districts, and they'll change those into an accessory dwelling unit. So we do need to get the parking out there for those. But in town, we won't be negatively impacting, the adjacent properties or the coverage, worrying about going over the 65%. So we're hopeful that this ordinance will pass and we will move forward with this proposal.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council regarding this item? Seeing none, this is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on this item. Remarks should be directed to council only. Once public comments have concluded, council may choose to answer your questions. Madam Clerk, are there any speakers registered for this item?
If and done.
Prefer to staff.
Okay, Cheryl Denso.
I just know that some of the streets in Norman are not very wide. And if you drop the requirements for off-street parking, it's going to get really, really, really tight. I've come from a place where the streets were very, very narrow to begin with, and as population has grown, basically you have a path, very narrow path to drive down when there's so much parking along the streets because there's more cars parked, because there's more people living in those tighter areas. And I know down around campus sometimes, just driving, say, down Webster Street, it's kind of hairy just to go from Campus Corner, say, north to Main Street. And so with the more dense housing going in, there's not really a whole lot of space to drive down those streets. So I want you to be aware of, if you remove the requirement of off-street parking, there's going to be more impact to the community that's trying to walk around, bike around, and drive on these narrow streets that are our core neighborhoods. The core neighborhoods just are not very wide streets. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Cindy Rogers.
Still Ward 4, still Cindy Rogers. I should sit closer. I agree that there will be impact of removing parking requirements. So I think an important part of this whole process is to really think about effective parking enforcement. And sometimes I see parking enforcement in my neighborhood, which is the one place in town we don't need parking enforcement. So I know there are places, people closer to the university, that are crying for parking enforcement. So somehow I feel like we could have a better IT solution for dealing with that. But so I think kind of enforcement, and you might have to do one side of the road sorts of things. Some communities use permitting to sort of make a market out of it so the city can gain some revenue, and regulate it in an unregulated way, which is what some communities do. So I think we're going to have some growing pains with this, but I'm also confident we'll figure it out.
Thank you, ma'am. That's it. Any final comments from council regarding this item? Councilmember Grant?
Yes, would Mr. Riesland come up here? Hello. I live in the core. I have some narrow streets and wide streets. What is the process for neighbors to limit the parking or shut down the parking on one side of the street?
They contact me, and we'll get the process started for them. The most common way is a citizen-driven petition, where they, once we know the limits of what they want to do, I'll create a map and a petition with all the potential signatures that they need to gather. They get 60% support. We install the signs.
And then, thinking about, oh yeah, enforcement for parking enforcement. If they're in a residential neighborhood, does that mean somebody from the neighborhood called parking enforcement, or?
That's certainly a way it can happen, yes.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Holman?
Thank you. So I live in what many refer to as the Dead President's neighborhood, and over by the stadium and the duck pond, Evans neighborhood too. And the streets are very narrow, and for many years, parking was allowed on both sides of each of those streets, and it was get down those streets. And over time, petitions were done, and parking was limited to one side of each street. It's limited to one side of my street, and I feel like parking enforcement lives in my neighborhood. Like if you park on that wrong side of the street, literally for 10 minutes, you will probably have a ticket, and I've seen it happen. Someone just parked and they ran in, and the parking enforcement was right behind them. And so one of the issues, though, is a few years ago, I had a request from people that live on Lincoln Avenue, which is right behind Headington Hall. It used to be a single-family residential street, basically, and then you had the old O'Connells and the commercial space on the corner there at Lindsay and Jenkins. But after Headington Hall was developed and Farmer Street was closed, at least in that section, traffic started getting a lot of big trucks, delivery trucks, semi-trucks, delivering to Headington Hall, and the residents on the street petitioned to have the parking removed on both sides. And I don't think they even did a petition. They came, and there is a function where the council, we could do it. It's really in an extreme circumstance. Very few property owners living on the street. But anyway, we enacted a parking ban on both sides of the street. And now Lincoln Avenue is a pretty high-speed cut-through for people trying to get from Jenkins to Lindsay or from Lindsay to Jenkins and miss the traffic light at Lindsay and Jenkins. So I caution folks about removing street parking, because it is really proven to be one of the most effective speed calming things that can exist, besides having speed humps, which nobody likes. I don't like. And there's only so many stop signs or traffic lights or flashing speed radar things we could put in. So street parking is really effective at slowing traffic down. And so that's something I would encourage people to think about. But also, if you allow it on both sides of the street, as the commenter was mentioning, it can create a situation where it's very difficult to get down the street. It could be difficult for emergency response. And then if both sides of the street are full of cars all the time, then it could have issues with pedestrian safety if people are ducking in and out of between cars and things like that. So I think one side of the street parking is a pretty effective way, and would encourage neighbors to consider allowing it if you don't on one side, or if you want to limit it to one side and allow it on the other. But I'm excited about this change to see what happens if we can help increase housing density in Norman without redeveloping everything into an apartment building, and without our only option to be continuing to develop single-family housing on the edge of town and continuing to sprawl out. So I think this is a good, small, incremental step to help with increased housing density. And as I mentioned before, some of my favorite buildings in Norman are ADUs in some of the alleyways of central Norman. So anyway, I'm excited to see how this turns out and see what ideas people might come up with for ADUs. And then again, with the parking, encourage neighbors to think about traffic calming without having to use speed humps and things like that. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. The motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on second reading. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to adopt the ordinance upon second reading passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on final reading.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and second. Motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on final reading. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to adopt the ordinance upon final reading passes unanimously with Councilmember Foreman out of the chambers.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item on the agenda is miscellaneous comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address City Council. Due to Open Meeting Act regulations, council is not able to participate in the discussion. Comments. Remarks should be directed to council as a whole and limited to 3 minutes or less. Madam Speaker, Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
We'll start with Diana Hutzel.
Good evening, Diana Hutzel, Ward 5. I'd like to provide some observations and recommendations regarding the city's audit of the food and shelter management contract. The contractor was tasked to provide a safe overnight shelter. However, the contractor employed untrained fire watch and unlicensed security personnel, putting the homeless, the city, and taxpayers at risk. The contractor was tasked to help individuals connect with permanent housing. However, the contractor employed personnel who lacked the minimal education and expertise to qualify as caseworkers. The contractor's actions likely impeded effective referral and support for services for the homeless. The contractor mismanaged, misused, and may have misappropriated taxpayer funds during contract execution. The contractor put the city and taxpayers at financial, legal, accountability, and project risk. For example, shelter contracts were commingled with other nonprofit funds. Contract funding was provided for security personnel outsourcing. However, the contractor canceled that outsourcing last September, did not notify the city, and continued to collect $32,400 each month for a non-existent expense. The contractor generated $31,000 in cost overruns across multiple areas of the contract, and then used contract funding designated for other purposes to cover those cost overruns. The contractor cannot account for the whereabouts of $20,542 of shelter contract funds. There's more, but my time is limited. Here are a few of my recommendations. Number 1, a cure notice or its equivalent should be issued to the contractor with the required date by which the findings must be corrected. Number 2, continue inquiring about the missing $20,000. The rationale of poor record keeping is puzzling, given the contractor began its operations in 1983, and the IRS filing last showed the tracking of $8 million in transactions. Number 3, obtain reimbursement for the funds the city paid the contractor for security outsourcing after the contractor ended outsourcing last September. The funding was for a set purpose. The contractor did not have authority to divert funding to other purposes. This is a business contract and must be treated as such. If the city has yet to change what it pays the contractor, then this should be north of $200,000. Number 4, public support requires proof of success. Modify the current contract to include metrics that clearly demonstrate the Shelter and Housing First are achieving long-lasting positive results for Norman's homelessness. Number 5, complete the shelter contract. Sole sourcing a contract requires the contractor be singularly qualified. The audit demonstrates a lack of required business expertise despite the 18 months of performance. You owe it to the homeless and the taxpayers to see if a more qualified contractor is available. And last, reactivate the ad hoc committee on homelessness. Use it to unite the varied individual resources and expertise in the local area to collectively address Norman's homeless challenges. Thank you.
Richard Baxter.
I don't see him.
Dan Munson.
I am Dan Munson, Ward 6. I'd like to talk about a slight restructure for the Norman Music Festival. So everyone knows it's a really popular event in our community. Thousands of local people attend and enjoy the event. There's a lot of expenses that the city incurs because of the Norman Music Festival. I've heard several people claim that it's one of the larger sales tax revenue generators during the calendar year. During the last 2 years, I've measured hotel rates at the Hampton Inn in Norman, Moore, and Oklahoma City. And what that does is it tells me occupancy. The rates, the higher the rate, the lower the occupancy. Okay. In 2023, the Norman Music Festival was going on in conjunction with the Fill the Stadium event. That was with Chance the Rapper. The OU women's softball versus Kansas had 4 games, and the University of Oklahoma had prospects in from all over the country visiting the campus. They had filled the field house for a speech by OU's president. Hotel rates at the Hampton Inn in Norman were $168. In Moore, they were $168. And in Oklahoma City, they were $278 that weekend. This year, the Norman Music Festival hotel rates in Norman for the Hampton Inn were $127. In Moore, they were $101. And in Oklahoma City, they were $130. This event isn't just bringing in enough hotel stays to increase sales tax and hotel tax revenue. I'd like us to consider combining the Norman Music Festival and a film festival. Have them both at the same time. And additionally, I would like for us to consider more inside venues. There was a lot of sales tax revenue that was lost this year because we had to cancel because of bad weather. And that's not an uncommon thing, considering the time of the event. I'd also like to just let you know that if we continue to have a free event, that's great. I think we should always have a free event, but I also think that we should have a paid event for possibly a nationally recognized band to come in and play. If you look at Pryor, Oklahoma, they host Rocklahoma. A one-day general pass is $120. I'm not saying we should charge $120, but I think we should start collecting some revenue to draw in more outside people. Thanks.
Evan Dunn?
Evan Dunn, Ward 7, 1400 Garfield Avenue. On behalf of everyone who's ever lived in this community, who is from some other part of the world, I want to give this United Nations flag to this city because they have, the international students who have been coming here for decades have been spending money here. We have money from Iran, we have money from Saudi Arabia, we have money from South America, we have money from Russia, all because we possess this institution that is a universe that's concentrated in a single city. And there is transcendent power in that. Now, where would we put it? Put it underneath the American flag. You know, America was one of the founding designers and architects of this institution, but it needs to be up there. We need not deny the fact that this is a community whose sales tax dollars are composed of the GDPs from throughout this world. So that's one thing. Oh, the congressional delegation. I'd love to know what was discussed. Did anybody talk about food foresting? Did anybody talk about this postural revival? If not, we wasted an opportunity to reach people who have more influence. Are you teaching your constituents the perfect breath? 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. If you're trying to enhance their lives, that's where we start. I know I'm trying my best at the farmer's market. Every Saturday I'm up there. I don't even do anything on Friday nights. I don't even go to the deli anymore because I believe in this mission. You know, every time I come here, I always kind of get overwhelmed and I feel like I want to teach you all something that kind of is a concentration of the classes that I try to teach. Okay.
Cheryl Ann Denso.
Cheryl Ann Denso, Wards 4 and 6. Life is full of wonderful surprises. I just want to reiterate that it is very important that we are consistent in the way we apply the rules to everybody in this community. We are consistent in how we view compliance with the rules, both with the citizenry and the government. And I want you to take a good hard look at yourselves and think about whether or not you are following the rules. Thank you.
Cindy Rogers.
Ooh, we got a slight break from Evan, so I hate to go right after him. As we wrap up tonight, I just want to stress that $600 million is a lot of money. The Department of Commerce does an annual TIF report, and I looked through it. There is no TIF increment district in the state of Oklahoma that is that large, not in Oklahoma City, not in Tulsa. So we really need to do our due diligence on that and think about if we want this sort of project, if we need this sort of project, and if we can afford this sort of project. I was really disappointed but not surprised about what happened in the Statutory Review Committee. It's not a committee of economists. As a lawyer said there, I'm a lawyer, not an economist. Well, it turns out they didn't really get economic input into the studies that they got. I'll provide this for you later, but there's a study by Wasmer, I think it's Ong and Profiter in 2016. The most significant flaw in economic impact studies is their incredible certitude. So what does this mean? All the projections were based on this assumption that the future real estate development would provide a certain benefit and certain future values. It's not uncommon for overpromising future investments and then not delivering. In fact, we have seen that happen in our very own UMP TIF, where we never got the lifestyle center, but hey, I understand Hobby Lobby and Mardell are now moving in where we were promised the Neiman Marcus. That was a promise not kept. I want to urge you to send the plan back to the Statutory Review Committee and instruct them to consider alternative scenarios, including excluding the retail south of Rock Creek. I mentioned that last time I was here, but that was in the original UMP TIF. The increment ended to end that diversion. The developers got a nice buyout on that. They didn't have to pay back the penalty. And we didn't get the lifestyle center. But now we're gonna TIF it again and not grab 60% of those, not divert 60% of those revenues, but divert 100%. That's a worse deal than what we had if that increment on that district had stayed there. So you should send it back. You should require some sensitivity analysis to deal with uncertainty.